points lower. That's
Woo.
down 0.4%.
Karen.
49.63
Karen.
on the index right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average
You're so
down
cool. You're
291
so
points.
cool.
That's a decline of 0.8%.
You're so cool. You're so cool. You're so cool.
A big bid
Yeah,
right now to some of the technology shares.
You
The
are so
NASDAQ
cool.
100
Hey,
is
I
up
turned my
20
microphone on
points right
today.
now, up
Woo.
0.1%. Nvidia shares, they were up right now 2.6%. You have Apple shares up 0.25%.
Good morning.
And
Good
Tesla also
morning.
seeing some
Good
buyers
morning
for
to
those shares right now
you.
up
Hope you
1.5%.
don't have
Among the big
anything in the
decliners, you
market.
have
No, that's
Pfizer
not
right
true.
now.
Look at
That is down
Nvidia's up.
4%. We're
What the
expecting
hell? Good morning,
President
Lee.
Trump
Good
saying
morning,
the US
Neil.
planning
Good
to
morning,
announce a major tariff
Kevin.
on pharmaceuticals
Oh, look,
soon.
everything's doing
And
just
we check the markets for you
fine.
all day long right here
What's
on
the
Bloomberg
problem?
Radio. That is your Bloomberg
Ding, ding,
opening
ding.
bill report going
John
Iggy.
Tucker, thank you so much.
Okay,
for the
opening
efforts,
bill report.
today. Right on the screen here, but
This
decidedly
is
better
your
than what we saw 3
famous
hours ago. Again, the
capitalist.
VIX. We'll get
Actually, this
I don't
guy's
like
pretty
the VIX
funny.
right now. We'll get a better one.
He's
Here
pretty
in about
good.
52
Anyway, yeah, the market.
66.
I don't know what the market did,
Really
actually.
wonderful.
Now that I say
particularly
that.
after the heavy lifting of that conversation on derivative.
Sorry. I just wanted to see the opening bell. Just going to be here for a short time. Have some concussion symptoms this morning. Babe. Babe. What are we going to do with you? What are we going to do with you, Kevin? Girl, you got to be careful. Go take care of yourself. Please. I hope you still have your friend with you. Maybe they can help you. Babe, I'm worried about you. I have a problem. I'm worried about you. Good morning, Pepper. Good morning, Lee. Good morning. Good morning, Carrie. You had a bike ride this morning? Fuck yeah. Lee, I love this. I just adore. You know how sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I could go on vacation. When I hear you talk about vacation, I'm just like so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. They left for work and it's me and the pup. All right. Well, take care of yourself, please. I know he cannot catch a break. Kevin, you cannot catch a break. I hope that means really good things are on the horizon. I really do. I want there to be good things for you. I wish that for you, my friend. Good morning, gal. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah. Well, there was a there was a treasury auction this morning, and I think there was a lot of treasury sell-off. I don't really know the bond market, so I don't really understand how it's happened. I know, babe, don't be done. There's no alternative. Yeah, it's gonna be okay. Kev, hang in there, baby. We have a lot going on today too. Yikes. We've got, what the hell did I write? Oh, AI. I'm like, A1? Why did I write A1? Hi, Easily. Why did I write A1? But no, it's AI. Digital age regulations. Oh, the VA. I thought that was yesterday. Do 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 do. Ba-na-na-na-na-na. Wow. Did you see Iguana? Did you see Randy Fine is fucking with this, is feuding? I thought fucking. Well, I guess fucking in a way, if he's feuding. Whoop whoop, little Florida, 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 Florida. The market's down 188 points. That's not that much. That's not that much. Oh, there is a. I don't know. I get that not everybody's really interested in the financial stuff. I kind of am, only because. Okay, so we've got this morning American Innovation in the Future of Digital Assets. We've got. There's a sanctuary one, but I feel like I hate the way they do sanctuary cities. I'd rather hear from the mayors. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hi, Iggy. I have to drive up. I'm Connie. She's going to send it to you. Iggy, she's going to send it to you. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. Here we go. All right, what else is happening? OPM. Okay, so there's some OPM guys. That's ridiculous. And I don't care about them. And let's see. That's nope, not gonna do that. And good morning to you. I hope that you're good. Oh, this is what it is. It's fucking what's his name? Yeah. Jameson Greer is going to be now in front of what is this? Is this to the Senate or is it? Oh, shitty balls. Was it to the Senate or the House? I'm not even sure. Must be the Senate. So we've got that. That's a. Oh, I did have the markup of bills on trade policy. That's right. Uh, 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 mm, 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 mm. God. Why do they crowd everything on 1 or 2 days? Is that live? Is this live?
Mr. Scott, just to
Oh, this
harken
is
back
rules.
to
Okay,
the,
I like
one
these
of
ones. These are
many
those ones
things
I
that
like.
I'm sure
I
are
did
being
have this one on
considered
my
in terms
list.
of how to make Medicaid run more efficiently and effectively for the people who depend on it. You mentioned
Is
the
that what
block
you want to
grant
do?
piece.
Really?
The
Oh,
to run that program and even link the value of that program to medical inflation, which is a higher
quality
index
outcomes.
than you would actually turn the outcomes from going down to up for the most vulnerable, and you'd save $900 billion plus dollars. So
How much?
900, almost $1 trillion. So that example is all I'm saying, shows you how much waste and inefficiency that program has when it's being poorly run by the federal government.
okay.
Madam Chair.
Who
this
are you
is,
going to get to run it?
We have to get this trade deficit under control.
What?
If we don't extend the current tax law, I think we will have a serious recession that will hurt everybody and potentially the dollar no longer be the world currency. With that, I'm very much in favor of the bill, and I yield.
Mr. Scott, you
Thank
don't
very
understand what
much,
you're
Mr.
saying.
Scott, for your attention to the time. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's just after 9:30 a.m. Do you know where your 401k is? It's down.
I'm done
It's
with
down.
this.
Stocks are tumbling again. Treasuries are off because just since midnight, Trump has added more across-the-board tariffs. The Chinese have retaliated,
Oops.
and the European Union just moved 25% tariffs on U.S. goods. So the trade war escalates. I had a town hall in my district last weekend, and the turnout was overwhelming. Actually had several. Since Republicans have all but given up on having town halls in their districts, I want to share what I heard from my constituents and from theirs when I've attended town halls in their districts. I heard from people
Buy
who
those
are terrified
Buy those
by the
bottoms.
turmoil caused by Trump's economic
Buy those
moves,
dips. Here's some
disastrous
dips.
tariff war, the layoffs, the cuts. to
Yeah, I bet he
programs that
does,
people
Neil.
Rely upon.
We're so
I heard from
fucked.
people whose retirement plans are hemorrhaging value.
Where's my
Folks who are
coffee?
scared about being able to afford basic goods. I heard from people who rely on programs like Medicaid and Medicare and SNAP and WIC to make ends meet for their families. All these peoples and their fears and their problems are victims of the disastrous economic and government policies coming from the Republican Party. And it is not scare tactics when the truth is scary. You can't ignore the facts. So in the past week, we've seen Trump cause the greatest market upheaval in recent memory, one that rivals the market crash caused by the pandemic. It may now be beyond it. And while trillions of dollars have been erased every night, we've heard nothing from Republicans in Congress. How long are you going to keep your heads buried in the sand while Trump burns our economy to the ground? To add insult to injury, our Republican colleagues are back again in Rules Committee today to force through a budget resolution that even they concede is disastrous, but it's one that hands tax giveaways to big businesses and the rich and pays for them by slashing fundamental benefits and services in our social safety net programs that millions of working families rely upon. These Republican policies are destroying our middle class. They're destroying our economy, and they're destroying our strength and standing in the world. Despite
On
40
purpose.
years,
Like
almost 50 years now, I think, of
self-inflicted
empirical
wound.
evidence showing that these policy of robbing the middle class to give tax breaks to the rich are a resounding failure. Republicans are nonetheless trying to push through with this party orthodoxy again. These policies do not work. Trickle-down economics does not work. It doesn't help the middle class. It doesn't
Hey,
create
Pepper.
jobs. It doesn't increase business investment, and it doesn't grow the economy. What these policies do is allow billionaires and big business to pocket more profits at the expense of everyone else. And it allows our national debt and deficit to grow. It's because of trickle-down economics that we now have the most extreme income inequality in our nation's history. But when faced with these facts, Republicans have no answers. So what are they doing? They're making up their own facts. We heard stories about tax handouts paying for themselves. We've heard claims without proof that every federal program is burdened with massive
Hi,
fraud
Black
and
Bear.
abuse.
How are you
They're now casting
doing? Good to
doubt
see
on
you,
official
friend.
budget data.
Good morning.
Making up their own fake
Sorry we
budget
meet under
scoring
these
plan.
circumstances.
So they're trying to sneak around our budget laws with accounting gimmicks that hide the true cost of their budget plans. Even with these gimmicks, their plan will still cost
Hi, gimme
trillions of
coffee. Oh my
dollars
gosh. So
and
good to
add
see everybody.
tens
Good
of
morning. Oh,
trillions
gimme
to the
coffee. I
national
missed you
debt.
in the
If
earlier.
they weren't cooking the books, the debt figures would be even higher.
Yeah,
Time
Lee
and time again, since
knows
the
how
end
to
of World War
beach.
II,
She knows
Republican
how to
economic policy has
invoke
been
the beach.
disastrous for our economy. And it's always been Democratic presidents and Democratic Congresses that have had to clean up the mess created by the Republicans.
It's actually true,
Then,
oddly enough.
as now, Democrats are fighting to invest in working families, protect health care,
Okay.
and build an economy that works for everyone, not just the rich. But here we are, about to go down the same road, because at the end of the day, Republicans work for the rich. They work for billionaires and big business, and everyone else is being left to fend for themselves. Now, when this Senate budget bill was released on Saturday, Mr. Arrington released a statement that said the Senate response was unserious and disappointing. And I have to agree, but probably for different reasons. Mr. Boyle, you spoke about the Medicaid cuts that are required by the budget plan put forward by House Republicans. And just to be clear, Medicaid funds medical care for seniors, children, and people with disabilities. Now, we hear from our colleagues that they're not going to cut benefits. So how do you cut $500 billion from Medicaid and still not cut benefits?
Yeah.
Because the proposals I've heard have to do with capping Medicaid. So saying that you only, over the course of your life, you only get so much, kind of like that insurance company a few months ago that tried to cap the amount of anesthesia you could get
Oh my
if you
God.
were having an operation. Capping who's eligible, kicking people off the rolls and limiting the amounts of benefits they can get. Can you talk about what these Medicaid cuts will actually look like?
Yeah, so first, just to be clear, there's no question, as CBO has confirmed, there would have to be, in order to follow the instructions that are laid out in this resolution, there would have to be Medicaid cuts, because even if Energy and Commerce cut 100% of everything else they have jurisdiction over, that would only get them about $380 billion. So at least $500 billion would have to come from Medicaid. Now, a number of folks on the other side, including the chairman, cite this $500 billion figure, quote, in waste, fraud, and abuse
Oh my
in
God.
Medicaid. I would point out GAO later revised their own estimate. They said it's $31 billion in fiscal year 2024 and includes things like correct payments with missing documents. In fact, GAO's report explicitly states, and I quote, "Not all improper payments are the result of fraud." They further say, quote,
Yeah.
"This estimate is not designed to detect or measure the amount of fraud." Just to be clear, if there's
Jesus.
$1 in fraud, frankly, in any program, I strongly oppose that. I think that we should absolutely correct it. I think it's offensive, frankly, to the people who follow the law and are law-abiding citizens, which are the vast majority of people in our country. But to say that there are, $500 billion worth of waste, fraud, and abuse, it just isn't so.
This
The
is what I
reality
need to
is
hear.
that real working
Hi, Teresa.
Americans will be deeply impacted by these Medicaid cuts that have to happen and, yes, are included in the bill before us.
Thank you.
And beyond that, when those
Thank
cuts
you
to Medicaid kick
for
in,
being
it's
honest
also going
and
to
clear.
cause our federally qualified healthcare clinics to go under because they're already on the line, which then leads to people having to go to the emergency room for ordinary care, which then impacts our hospital system.
That's right.
and
This
they're
is
already
bad.
struggling
It's
to
not
keep up.
good.
Um,
It's not a way to run your
Mr.
medical
Arrington made an
system.
impassioned speech about the need to address the debt, but what would this bill really cost? In any world, can it be called
Oh,
fiscally
Carrie.
responsible? And how, I guess, what would it cost and what would it do?
This is a deeply irresponsible piece of legislation that will clearly add trillions of dollars in new debt. And, I want to read from some budget experts across the ideological spectrum. First, it was a joint letter from
He's
a number
nice.
of budget
He's a
experts,
Democrat.
again, across the political spectrum.
Democrat.
And this just ran on April 4th. Quote, there is no point
looks
of
like a
budget
Republican.
enforcement if Congress gets to pick the score it wants. There was another opinion piece by Brett Loper of the Peterson Foundation, as well as Bill Hoagland, who is with the Bipartisan Policy Center and is the former Republican staff director of the Senate Budget Committee. Quote, using a
heard that
current
name,
policy
Hoagland.
baseline would be a serious act of fiscal irresponsibility,
You're right,
making
no,
it
Gary.
easier for either party to circumvent important budgetary guardrails, thereby accelerating
I
the
hope
growth
so,
of our
too.
national debt by many trillions for years to come. And then finally, Andrew Moylan, who's the former executive vice president of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, not exactly a left-leaning group,
Yeah, really.
said, quote, spending provisions should be debated on their own merits, tax policy should be debated on its own merits, and budget scoring should be consistent, regardless of which party is in charge. Trading away baseline integrity has the potential to be a monumentally bad deal, not just for today, but for every budget fight to come. I said this before,
This is a mess.
and this isn't a threat.
It's a fucking mess.
I think a common sense prediction.
They call
There is
food
no
programs
question
to
that
my
if we
tribal
set
people
this
a
new
waste.
precedent
We call it treaty
of using
laws. Oh
current
my God,
policy
Black Bear.
baseline, it will be used
It is
and abused
absolutely
by both
fucking
sides
believable.
to hike up our national debt for years and years to come. And I
I
believe
don't know how
that
anyone
genuine fiscal
votes for a
conservatives,
Republican. I really
years
don't
from now,
fucking
will
know.
look back at this moment and live to deeply regret the opening of
Exactly,
the
no.
door to current policy baseline.
Well, I want to thank you. I greatly respect your expertise. You are very in the weeds on all this. And,
Yeah,
and a real
Scanlon, you
trusted
need to get in the
messenger
weeds
on
a
it,
little
and
bit.
I appreciate the data
Stop
that
it with
you
the
share
extreme
with
MAGA
everyone
Republicans.
on
Nobody
your House
fucking
webpage
cares.
So people can look and see the impact of these various budget proposals in their region. So thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can't believe
Let me
she's the
say
chair.
first that this resolution just moves us forward into the process.
Oh, stop
And while I
yourself,
would have
Griffith.
chosen a different path,
Stop
and
your
suggested
fucking
a
self.
different path, that's all it does. We then come back and start looking at things.
A 32-hour
I
work
wish,
week?
and I would hope that they might offer it somewhere online, the sale of the Democrats' magic crystal ball. Because
Oh
I'm
my
hearing
God.
numbers,
No,
I'm
we can
hearing
do
things being
math.
Said
We can do
that
math.
just aren't happening. Furthermore, Madam Chair,
Exactly, Black Bear. You're right.
if they want to come back and criticize
This
our
is
final
treatment
product,
that has
at
that
it.
the
But we don't have
the
that final
indigenous
product. None of
community
this
in
stuff
this
is written in
country
stone, and
has
yet I'm
had to
hearing
deal
things about
with
us
since
picking disabled
fucking
and
white
children
people
off
got
of,
here.
off of food stamps, gutting Medicaid, et cetera, and
Exactly.
none of that is on the table.
Ridiculous.
We are in Washington, D.C., and we can have differences, and numbers will lay on the page and let you interpret them in different ways. In Medicaid, as Chairman Arrington pointed out, if you make efficiencies, because when we're talking
Efficiencies?
about
What is an efficiency?
reconciliation, we're looking at over a 10-year period.
Okay. So no
And
big deal.
If you say that we're locked
You're not
in
You're not adding to
with the
Medicare and Medicaid, so you're
hyperinflation
taking away from it. How is
because of
that
the
good?
inefficiencies that we've had in Medicaid, and I'm going to take a minute to explain that in a second,
Really?
over the last few years and for some time, and merely changing that growth pattern slightly
Growth pattern?
is somehow a cut, then I guess you can call it a cut.
What's a growth
But
pattern?
it's not a cut. It's bending the curve on the inflationary factors in Medicaid. And
What?
how we get into
That doesn't make
Madam
any
Chair, is-
sense.
And I serve on Energy and Commerce, so we've
Say
been
it
looking
in
at this and
fucking
studying it.
English.
And how we get into that is that because right now Medicaid
can tell
is you
Today,
charge the fee.
I'm gonna be
the state
angry.
sends the fee to the federal government, and depending on what your FMAP, what the federal government, state government share is in your state, different money gets sent. But if it's an authorized expenditure, no matter what the cost is, the federal government is paying its share, whatever that is, and it changes from state to state. In Virginia, it's 50% for regular Medicaid, and of course 90% for Medicaid expansion. We automatically pay it.
okay.
So there's no incentive for the healthcare providers, whether it be a hospital or the federal qualified health centers, to find any efficiencies. And
Are you kidding
it's
me?
always hard to sit
Are
down
you
and try
kidding
to
me?
figure out how you're going to do this.
Wait,
We're looking at a lot of different concepts, but part of what we're looking at is empowering the facilities to find efficiencies.
what?
And the cap, and I
What?
think everybody's well-meaning in this, but to correct a statement that was made earlier that somehow we were going to cap your lifetime benefits, that is not even being talked about. I don't know
Really?
where that came from.
Really?
It's just a misunderstanding.
Really?
The cap means that we're going to cap the amount per year per individual.
What?
And then add to it an inflation factor.
What?
And because medical inflation in a whole,
What?
Medicaid outstrips medical inflation. Medical inflation outstrips the regular
What?
inflation, CPI,
You're going to cap
so that we're not trying to
what?
keep to make a cut by having inflation eat it up.
They just want to kill
Energy and
everybody. This
Commerce
is
looking at medical
eugenics.
inflation
This is
plus
just
1 or plus
killing
2.
people.
That has not yet been determined.
This is just killing people.
And just
This is just
capping
killing people.
the amount per patient that goes
Oh,
to a state or to an individual healthcare provider.
this is so bad,
That
you
then
guys.
gives the state and the healthcare providers incentive to reduce the extraordinary increases over a 10-year period.
What?
And so I
You're
guess
going to
we're
have to
back
explain that to me like I'm
if you
not
reduce, no, let me
5.
finish. If we reduce the increase that is
Reduce-
projected,
okay.
not actually on the table right now, but projected out into the future, that's a cut. I guess, I mean, I've never.
Yes, it is. And let me tell you why it is. Okay? Because what he's saying is that he's not going to there's no increases. It's capping the increases. So it is a cut. It is a cut. So shut the fuck up, Mr. Griffith. And if you have Mr. Griffith as your representative, you should be on the phone to his office right now to tell him that his math does not make any sense. Yeah, not a cap lifetime, year by year, Carrie. So if you need that surgery this year, well, I don't know. Maybe there just isn't enough money for it. I don't know, because he hasn't actually explained to us what the fuck he's talking about. So I don't really know.
Never bought that argument, but then I guess you could say there might be, in theory, some reduction. But it's trying to make all of these facilities more efficient
Oh,
because here's what my hospitals tell me.
okay. What do they tell
Chairman,
you?
Madam Chairman, and my healthcare providers. They understand that if we don't get the growth rate of the increases, not the basic program, but
Okay.
the increases,
Right.
and the fact that Medicaid inflation is
Cut the
outstripping all of
increases.
the medical inflation and
Right.
the CPI, the regular inflation.
Cut the
If we don't
increases?
get that under control,
Is that it?
the entire system will collapse at some point in the not too distant future.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do with this
Right. Uh-huh.
is both
Is
make
save
the
everybody.
government more efficient, but also to make our delivery system more efficient.
Really
We're not trying
efficient?
to cut any
We're
benefits.
not killing
we don't
anybody.
Want to cut any
What are
benefits.
you guys talking about?
We
Nobody's
just want to
dying.
make the system more efficient,
Nobody's
and by
dying.
doing so, we can find savings. Now, if that's not what we do in the final bill,
Oh, shut the fuck up.
feel free to come after us.
No, I'm going to
But
come
the
after you
fact
now,
that
you
people are
stupid fucking
afraid that we're
cunt.
cutting Social Security, as far as I know, not on the table. That we're cutting Medicare, I know that's not on the table.
Did he
That
sell?
we're
Wait.
cutting Medicaid benefits, not on the table. All we're trying to do is to make the system, over a period of 10 years, more efficient and create savings thereby. So
Who sold their
that's-
stock?
That's where we're at. And so I understand
Elon?
that there's concern.
Wait.
But people shouldn't be being scared that their benefits are going to be cut or that their hospital is going to close.
Who sold their
or that
stock?
the federally qualified health centers won't be out there. In the state of Virginia, my district has more federally qualified health centers than any other congressional district by far.
Trump had
In
2.4
my
billion of
district,
stock?
Under
What stock?
Obamacare, I lost 2 hospitals. One has
I need
reopened.
what?
One has
How
been
do we
able to
know?
reopen
How do we know he
modified.
sold?
and renovated, and so it doesn't do everything it used to do, but it's still there. And before that,
I can't even.
people had
I
to
can't
travel
believe this
because it was
world.
shut down under the
I can't
Obamacare
even
policy.
believe it.
Had
I
to travel
can't.
an hour
I
to see
can't.
whether they had indigestion
Fucking hell.
or a heart attack. And now they've got a hospital back there. But so I don't want to damage any of
Oh,
that.
Truth
And
Social.
we're working
Oh,
really hard to
God.
do that.
Oh, 2.3 billion.
but we also
Okay,
don't
no
want the
proof
system
that Trump.
collapsing somewhere in the not so distant
Wait.
future. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you for
Truth Social
your
filing. Oh,
excellent
it's a filing.
remarks.
Oh,
Mr.
he didn't
Neguse, you're
sell.
recognized.
He didn't sell. He
Thank you,
filed
Madam Chair.
insider
Good morning
trading
to our ranking
forms to
member
sell
and our
stock.
Budget Chairman. I have great respect for both of the gentlemen who are testifying today and appreciate their testimony. As you can imagine, Mr. Chairman, have
So he didn't-
questions
he
for
didn't
you,
sell 'em.
And you deeply disagree with the approach that House Republicans
Yeah,
are
you just
taking.
register them to be
First,
sold on the market,
My
which is
colleague
still
from
not great.
Pennsylvania,
I don't know.
Ms. Mary Scanlon
I wonder if somebody's buying
described
Truth
this, and I just
Social.
wanna make sure that
Seems
I'm
to me like there
understanding
might
this
be a
right. So,
Newsmax
the
deal.
resolution that you are here to testify in support of.
Newsmax
You
went
have
public
described
Monday, saw its stock rise
as
from $10 to
unserious
$233 in 2 days. What? Wait,
This
what?
is the bill that you
That's
want your
correct.
colleagues to vote for.
What I would tell you is the Senate's attempt at matching the balanced budget resolution of the House fell far short, which
Sure.
was disappointing. And I'm encouraging as we move forward in the process to the meat and potatoes of reconciliation, which is the policymaking side, that the House budget targets guide that. But you are correct.
I may be
I was
missing this.
disappointed.
I'm not on the budget committee,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. We're going to vote on a resolution today, right? This is the resolution that the Senate passed. Or am I, that hasn't changed.
That's correct.
Okay, and that bill is a bill you described days ago as unserious and disappointing, right? It's not, I mean, it's not a complicated, those are your
No,
words.
no, but I don't dispute those words.
Okay,
In
so
fact,
that-
I
I just wanna
love,
make
every
sure
time you say it, I want to say amen. Inside my Southern Baptist part of me wants to shout
Well,
hallelujah.
sure. Well, I don't know why you're voting for it if that's the case.
Because there are two parts to the resolution in the
Because
Senate.
he told me
There is
to.
the part that
Wait.
keeps our fiscally responsible framework for the House, which I
Well, have you seen the
implored
market?
my colleagues in the Senate to adopt in the
What's
upper
fiscally
chamber. They
responsible
failed
about
to
any
do
of
that.
this?
Okay.
And all I'm saying is, when we get to the combined reconciliation bill and the policies that will ultimately effectuate the changes,
I understand.
that's what should,
I
that the House
understand how
should
you're
drive
ra-
that.
I understand how you're rationalizing your vote on this. I'm just making sure it's clear for the record. I don't want there to be any ambiguity. I'll just again quote from this article. This quote this is from The Hill. Arrington criticized the budget plan for creating $5.8 trillion in new costs. That's the bill you're asking us to vote for, right?
I said 5.8 trillion in new cost with only a mere $4 billion
Sure.
in spending reductions
Okay.
that are enforceable.
Got it. But I'm
Because I have a hard time believing that we're going to do more than what is enforceable and that which we are bound by law, which is why the House is superior.
I
The
hear
House
you.
is pro.
Again, I recognize rationalizing the vote, just trying to clarify your perceptions of this bill. Because you
Of
can
the,
imagine
of the Senate's version.
but the Senate's
of
version is
resolution.
what we're voting on.
No, we've got two, that's I admit.
I mean, that's
I
what we're
admit,
here to meet about.
I admit it can be complicated for some, and I'm
Really?
not-
'Cause
I'm not
it's
being
complicated.
demeaning, but let me explain the
Okay.
complication away and
Here we go.
simplify it.
Okay.
The House
I'm ready.
has
Hit
a
me.
set of instructions
Okay.
that are fiscally responsible, and it's a complete plan.
Oh,
The
I see.
I don't know what that
Are
means.
those
has-
binding on the Senate? Those instructions?
They are not binding.
They're not
Oh,
binding. That's
okay.
how
Then why are we
interesting.
here?
Okay, so, yes.
And that's the concern I expressed.
I hear you, which is why I'm confused that you're voting for the bill. This is a very circular argument. On the one hand,
Yeah.
you get where I'm coming from, Mr. Chairman. You blast this bill as unserious and disappointing and as increasing the deficit, blowing up the deficit, $5.8 trillion in new costs. Then you make the case that, well, in fact, there are instructions that the House
How can
has
we have
dictated, and
5.8
therefore
trillion in new
that should
costs? I
ameliorate
thought we were
anybody's concerns
cutting.
about this bill. But of course, those instructions are not binding. So
What are we
I don't get it. I mean,
spending all that
I hear
5.8
you.
trillion
No,
on
you're
if we're
making,
not?
you're expressing the concerns that I expressed, I think, very accurately.
Then why not vote
and
no
there's
on the
still
bill?
there's still the concerns I have. So the more you talk about it, the more I think, my gosh, Mr. Nagus and I actually agree with the concerns that if the Senate's resolution were to guide the reconciliation process, I think we end up at a far less responsible outcome.
Join me in voting no. It sounds like you're a no vote. I mean, that
I'm
sounds like
a
the chairman
very,
of the House Budget
I'm
Committee.
concerned for the reasons you articulated.
Well, I would encourage you, if that's the case, to join House Democrats in opposing the bill. I mean, it seems like you're almost there. So anyway,
Joe,
I'll
give
move
him
on.
give
I
him
wanna
better
talk a
rope.
bit
Come on.
About,
You
it's-
can't force someone
I love having the
to
opportunity to have the budget
fuck
ranking
up
member and
their
budget chairman
own
here, so we can
team
talk a bit more
on
about the
on
Why don't
air.
you pick on him a
That's-
little bit?
So, Mr. Arrington,
Oh, here we go.
The committee will come to order.
posted this on X about a year ago. This is in August of 2024. It's a tweet and it says, "Nobody knows how to get an economy running like President Trump." You still believe that?
I believe that President Trump's economic
Do you still
agenda.
believe that? It's
Yeah.
not a- yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
still- you still
And
believe-
if past his prologue,
Got it.
we're going to have a red hot economy
No,
like
we're
we
not.
did the first.
Okay,
Let's
you
talk a bit
say
about the
we
president.
had a
So
red hot
would you-
economy.
what do you
We
describe
didn't.
An economy running well as?
We didn't
How
have a
would you describe
fucking
it?
Well, I would-
well-running
I
economy
would
before
say,
COVID.
Would
Fuck
a recession
off.
count? Is that
I would say growing the GDP by almost an entire 1% in 2 years after deregulation, tax cuts,
No.
work incentives,
It's
good
interesting
energy
that you-
That's
policy.
not
years.
it. No,
Because-
No,
sorry.
in 2
I know,
years
I
prior to
understand.
COVID.
It's interesting
Sorry.
that you've used 2 years as the marker because, of course, as you know, every economist in the country is now predicting that we will have a recession if
Yeah.
we are not experiencing
If we're
one
not in one
already.
right
I
now.
don't know that most Americans, like, I'm not an economist, but I think
Wait
most
for the
Americans,
layoffs.
whether they're in West Texas or in Colorado,
They're
they
coming.
wouldn't describe a recession as an economy running well. I mean, does that make sense?
Right?
You don't disagree with that, right?
I think the American people who voted
Stop.
overwhelmingly
Are
in every
stupid.
swing state in support
Are
of this
stupid.
president said,
Are
I
stupid.
don't want any more
Are
of
stupid.
the unbridled spending and failed
They didn't
economic
say that.
policies of the Democrat
They didn't
Party,
say
with all
that. They
respect,
wanted no
and
tax on
President
tips,
Biden. And
okay?
the
They
inflation
wanted,
that came with it, and the
racist
increased debt
policies.
that came
That's what
with
they
it,
wanted.
and the
That's what they
depressed
voted
economy
for,
that came with
sir.
it.
I know
It sounds
you would
you're
like to think
defending
you
a
don't
recession.
represent
I don't get it.
bigots,
Honestly,
but
Oh,
you do.
Let's just level
yeah,
with each other.
yeah.
Let's just level with each other.
I'd love to.
Okay? If a Democratic president were in office
Yeah.
and we're taking actions that were causing a recession, you're going to tell me with a straight face you describe that as the economy running well? Let's be serious with each other. You know that's
First
not
of
the
all,
case.
there's not a recession.
Oh.
There is the political courage to reset an unfair
Reset
trade
an
dynamic
economy?
with the United States,
What?
which I hope you would support.
Okay,
No.
Right? I mean,
stock
no.
market-
And so
stock
the,
market collapsing,
No.
Yeah.
bond market in turmoil, recession on the horizon.
Get your
None of
fucking
that
head
to
out of
you
your ass,
constitutes an
white
economy that
guy.
isn't running well.
It-
That's
no.
a fascinating.
yeah, no, it's
That's a fascinating position to take. You know what's
Yeah.
interesting? Okay, how about this? How would you describe a 1,000 point drop in the stock market? How would you describe
This is
I would
the
say
rules
stock
committy, so
market
they
rises
are.
and
This is
falls.
their
It's more
working room.
sensitive to
Rises and
changes and-
falls.
It's
Okay,
different
so
than
more
the other
sensitive to
hearings.
can I
It's
just
not really a
complete my
hearing. It's
thought?
like a
answered it. You
workout
said
on the
rises and falls.
bills.
It's
Changes in policies.
It's where they
and a
go back and
tremendous
forth on
shift, I
what
think
is
you would
gonna be in
agree,
a bill
with the policies
with
of the last
amendments and shit.
administration.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
where
have
this
that.
president wants
I
to
have
take
it.
our
I was
country.
just going to
Big deal
move
or
to
not?
that.
I mean, filibuster.
Which one?
A 1,000 point drop in the stock market. How would you describe that
I
to your
think
constituents?
I think it's going to be a much bigger deal when the stock market over the long run
Over the
improves
long
along
run.
with this economy
Okay.
and
Just
along
wait.
with the worker
That's
wages.
not what you were saying last year. That's
tell
not
me-
what you were.
tell me what I
explain it to
said
you.
last
So
year.
last year, here's a statement.
Yeah,
A press
please.
release from the House Budget Committee. Chairman Arrington, on the drop in financial markets and the fiscal decline of the Biden-Harris administration's economy. When the stock market dropped 1,000 points several years ago, you rushed to bemoan President Biden's actions and the economy that he was presiding over. You condemned it. Now the stock market drops 1,000 points every day for the last week, and you claim it's the economy running well. Do you understand why that would be a tough argument?
Yeah,
for the
but I
American
can
people
explain it to you.
understand?
Yeah,
Oh,
I can
can you?
explain it to you.
Okay.
Because you had consistently bad fiscal and economic policies that resulted in persistently bad economic environment for
Oh,
the American people.
you think this isn't
mainly
gonna
40-year high
persist?
inflation. So this is year after year, quarter after quarter, and we're talking about the first 2 or 3 months of Trump's administration.
It
where
hasn't
we're
even been any
transitioning from
time
that,
yet.
From that failed agenda.
I get it.
To
Wait,
one that's
he's
going to put
doing
us in a
something
place
magical.
a stronger
Oh,
So you want to give him
position.
some time. I get it. So 1,000 point drop in the stock market, bond markets collapsing.
Just wait.
Recession on the horizon. At what
It's
point,
gonna be
let's say there's
great.
a depression.
Yeah.
At that
Yeah.
point, would I be able to get your commitment that you'd say, I don't agree with the president's policies? How far are you willing to go?
Yeah. How far are you willing to go?
Because we are likely to have a recession here.
Yeah,
again, if we're
yeah,
not
we
experiencing it
are.
already in the next couple months. How much pain are the people of West Texas willing to tolerate? Is a depression enough?
This
Well,
is
I'm glad
about,
you asked
you're
me
going to
about my
start
people,
seeing
'cause I can
layoffs.
speak about West Texans. They're thinking about the next generation
Oh,
of farmers
stop.
and ranchers.
Sure.
And they know that the current conditions and relationship that is just completely and totally unfair.
Give me a break. They
will-
don't know
will bankrupt
shit
the farmers of the
about
future.
trade.
Secondly,
Fuck off.
the
It
people.
sounds like the answer is there's no limit.
The people.
You haven't answered the question.
The people of
There's
West
no
Texas will
limit.
tell you, the day you wake up and you have to beg another country for your food and for your energy, like
Oh,
we have to
give
beg for
me
our
a
drugs to be
fucking-
made.
when did
and
we
computer
beg?
chips.
Did we
You tell
beg?
me what you would
Did
pay
we beg?
to avoid that for
Yeah.
your children.
What
And I know
about
you
your
love
guy?
your children as much as I do. You tell.
Why don't you? What about your guy not instituting the Defense Production Act during COVID so that more people died because he was so stupid that he couldn't figure out how to run a government during a pandemic? This is bullshit. How embarrassing. How embarrassing. If I was a Republican, I'd shoot myself. Because this is embarrassing. He does want tribal nations to beg for food. You're right, Black Bear. You're right. He thinks he's in with the big kids now. Arrington does. He thinks this is his ride to the top. Because yes, the administration is trying to crash the economy. The administration is looking at defaulting on all debt. No one will buy our treasuries. They couldn't find sellers this morning for the treasuries. Or buyers, rather. So there was a sell-off in the debt of the United States, which is our credit rating, basically, and whether or not people trust us if they buy our debt. They think that somehow this is going to accelerate the transformation of this country into this technate where We just take the resources that we want from other countries because we have a big, beautiful military that we can hold over their heads. I'm not kidding. This is where this is going. The Mar-a-Lago Accord was very clear. You extort the resources and the items you need from other countries by using your military might as a threat. That is what this country is about to become. That's why they don't care. Because whatever is left over is a fire sale. And then the donor class, who has been relatively quiet to this point, can step in and start the purchasing. That's what's in the minds of this administration. No, it's not Trump. He doesn't have an original thought in his motherfucking head. He is the spokesperson for this. These are all his people behind him. This is this administration. That's why I won't refer to it as Trump, because it is this administration that is making this happen. This is their plan. Yeah, did they unplug and restart the economy? Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they think they're doing a massive unplug. Yeah, if your guy thinks the way to get COVID numbers down is to stop testing, your guy might be a con man. It's all of them, Pepper. You're absolutely right. This guy, look at this moron. He knows this isn't right. He knows that the trade war is ridiculous and a self-inflicted wound. He knows all of that, but he can't turn back now. Or at least he doesn't think he can. It's ridiculous. All right, we're going to go hear from the trade representative. Mister. Yet again, mealy-mouthed Jameson Greer.
I first want to say congratulations,
And here's this
Ambassador
idiot.
Greer, on your
I'm gonna-
confirmation.
I don't care about your
Very
speech.
busy. Thank you for being here with us. The only mistake is you went to the Senate before us, but you won't do that
does that
again,
mean?
I'm sure.
The fuck does that mean?
The Trump administration's trade policies
He's at the House.
are leveraging
He's in the House,
the power
Lee.
of the world's largest market
this is
to
the
create
House-
fair trade
what is it?
relationships that level the playing field for American farmers,
I can't remember.
workers, and producers. The Trump agenda
don't know which
prioritizes
committee
the
this is.
long-term prosperity of working families and
Yeah, the
communities
Trump agenda.
ahead of short-term stock market
Oh.
swings. The American people are counting on us to think beyond.
Wait, did he just call it short-term stock market swings? Is that what he just said? Is that what he just said? Yeah, they are disgusting pigs, rabid with greed and utterly lacking in empathy, and they should all just rapture. Where's the blip when you need it? Apologies to actual pigs who are lovely and some of the most smartest animals in the world. Okay, here we go.
On
Speaking of
today's
pigs.
headlines
I
and
can't
stay
stand 'em.
focused on growing the economy and creating good
What?
paying jobs.
What?
Prior to President Trump's reciprocal tariff action, an estimated two-thirds
I gotta smoke some
of
weed.
the 600,000
I gotta smoke
products
some major weed.
exported by American companies paid higher tariffs than foreign trading partners
God.
paid on similar exports to the U.S.
I smoke a lot of weed today.
Thailand
Ways and
charges
means.
a
That's right. Thank you.
50%
Thanks, Lee.
tariff on U.S. beef.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what
Japan
committee.
charges
It's
a
all crap.
700%
It's all meaningless
tariff
now.
on U.S. rice.
No, stop it.
Australia effectively blocks the sale of U.S. beef while we imported
Biff.
$3 billion from them just
Well,
last
we
year
should
alone.
stop shooting
The
up our
European
animals with
Union
bleach and hormones.
rejects our biotech crops through a torturous
biotech
6-year
crops.
regulatory process. It's only fair that we levy tariffs similar to the ones faced by American-made
my
products.
shit's down. That's why.
Since Inauguration Day, we have seen more than $5 trillion in commitments for
No.
new investments.
Okay, I thought it was
in the
$7
US,
trillion.
including
He's terrible.
after the announcement of the recipient.
Let me tell you about this, okay? This trillion number of investment in this country has grown exponentially every day for the last few days since the market took a shit. Okay? Since the market took a shit, these guys have been like, oh yeah, we have $7 trillion in investments. No, 5, no, 7 now. Now it's 7. Bullshit. List them. Yeah, I thought it was 9. It just keeps growing. It's the same thing as the amount of illegal aliens that have come over the border. It's a stupid fucking made up number that isn't real because it changes every time, but nobody ever seems to notice that. Nobody ever asks the question like, can you tell me where you got that number? Because again, I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to be the girl that says it until she's dead. This is about disinformation, okay? This is about disinformation. That's what this is. That's why we lost the election. That's why we're here now with a trashed economy. It's because disinformation took hold back in the 2010s, and we never did anything serious to combat it. Ever. And we're still not doing it. Yeah, Foxconn, 70 countries. Like, literally. That is it. Hi, Carla. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're getting more sleep. We're all going to need a little more sleep. Here we go.
Reciprocal tariffs. Since Liberation Day,
I'm gonna get real
nearly
high
70
for a long
different
time,
nations have
all
come
day
to
long.
the table asking to reset our trading relationship. This approach will generate more market access under better terms
What?
for American producers.
What market
And
access?
if any nation
No one is
chooses
gonna buy
not
our
to
shit.
cooperate,
Okay?
these tariffs, they will generate significant revenues.
They won't.
Based on President Trump's tariff policies,
They
so
won't.
far, it seems conservative to expect
they will stop.
the U.S. to
They're
collect
already forming
hundreds
new
of
trading
billions
blocks.
of dollars in additional tariff revenue.
They're already forming new trading blocks all around the world. Okay? The UK is not sitting around. They're like, oh, all right, India, Canada, Africa, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They're doing the right thing, which is let's expand our trading relationships. But not
each
us.
year. President Trump is continuing the successful strategy
He's
he
not.
used in his first term.
We need to stop
Tariffs
this one
brought
too.
China
This is a
to the
fucking
negotiating
boondoggle.
table for the Phase 1 agreement, which has netted $40 billion in annual tariff revenue paid
We're
by
not gonna
importers
sell our shit
from
to other
China
people,
and increase
period.
fairness for American producers.
Unless we change
Other
the way we do
agreements,
it.
like USMCA, opened
pedos are
markets for
liars.
American-made products and ensured fair treatment for our workers and businesses.
Yeah.
An America First
Ready
trade
for a
policy
coma yet?
is needed now more than ever. America ran trillion-dollar goods trade deficits
I'm speeding
all
him
4
up.
years under Biden. Previously, America has never run even one year. We ran a $32 billion agriculture trade deficit last year.
Yeah,
Under President
well,
Trump's first administration,
because we
had an average
subsidize
annual
our farmers to
agriculture
grow
trade
too much.
surplus of $5 billion. The Biden administration
And now
failed
we
to
don't have
counter
any customers
China's
like
moves to
USAID.
reorder the global economy around Beijing.
Oops.
Failure to assess whether China was adhering
Bandy
to the
Lee.
Phase 1 agreement meant the agreement was
Yeah,
never
exactly. Just
truly
got
enforced.
smeared.
The Trump administration is reviewing potential violations of the agreement,
Seems
as well as
conservative to
exploring
expect
Section 232
billions.
and 301 investigations to further address
They
unfair
think people are just gonna
trade
pay that
barriers
shit?
ripe
Fuck
for
no.
enforcement actions. President Trump has
Yeah.
made good on his promise to tackle
right,
China's
Jane.
abuse of our trade laws and ended its access to the de minimis privilege. The administration's actions mirrored committee legislation passed last year to crack down on the instance of China's trade abuse. And President Trump has now set in motion
Tell
a
him not to
process
choke
to
on
end the
those
de minimis
balls.
privilege globally
Oh, wait.
to improve trade
Here we go.
enforcement.
Oh,
the Biden
it's early.
administration had to be
It's
dragged
early.
into fighting
But
Canada's
it's never
denial
too early.
of market access to our dairy farmers and Mexico's similar treatment of our corn farmers. The Trump administration will enforce trade agreements to benefit farmers and ranchers. Strong enforcement should be complemented with trade relationships that respect American workers
Your
and manufacturers.
balls.
President Trump's tariffs have set the stage for the United States to negotiate from a position of strength. I fully anticipate more
Oh my
nations to
gosh.
come forward to reset their trading relationship with the United States. I represent an agriculture and manufacturing region under unfair trade
You should be
policies.
embarrassed.
We've had factories shut down and lay off people in our district. The Dana Corporation, an auto parts company in Cape Girardeau, closed, killed 440 jobs, and shipped them to Mexico. A Briggs & Stratton factory where my mother worked in Rolla, Missouri, closed, killing 450 jobs, and shipped them other places. The Brown Shoe Company in Sikeston, Missouri, was just one of numerous brown shoe factories in our congressional district that closed, costing hundreds of jobs. Nordine closed in Poplar Bluff back in 2013, cutting 500 jobs, and moved that production to Mexico. Noranda shut down its aluminum plant, costing 900 jobs in New Madrid, Missouri in 2016, before the aluminum tariffs. I could go on, as could every member on this dais. Changing course and undoing the damage caused by years of unbalanced trade relationships won't happen overnight. President Trump's economic agenda, from tariffs to tax relief to
Biden
deregulation, is
Biden
about making
Ghazi.
it competitive again to build, manufacture, grow, and produce in America. I look forward to working to change our trading relationships
Hey, Edward.
to a source
The company
of our
I work
nation's
for puts out
economic
2.3 million of
strength and
product
revenue, not
every
a
day. We
source of
mainly
decline and
overseas. Our
dependence.
customers haven't
Thank you
canceled
for coming
orders yet,
before
but
the
they have
committee, and I
pushed
look forward
orders
to hearing
out
your
months to see
testimony.
where things
I am
go.
pleased
Oh
to
my
recognize the ranking
God,
member, Mr. Hill, for
Cam!
his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't
wanna
even
thank
think
you,
of that,
Ambassador Beer, for being
where
with us
people
today. There's a
delay.
new political caucus, as you know, that has been formed in this town.
Oh boy, this is
It's called
going to be
Republicans
bad.
for Tariffs. This is the first time that we've heard them ever embrace tariffs. And I might point out that Liechtenstein doesn't stand a chance. From the economic soft landing that President Trump was handed and low
This is
unemployment
at
rate,
1.25 speed.
2.9% average growth GDP, and millions of jobs created during the previous 4 years.
Oh,
It's
good
only
call
taken
out.
him
Lee's our trade
79 days
representative,
to
Edward.
inflict this permanent
She works
damage.
in trade.
Recession odds are getting higher
Edward
by the
Cam,
day.
keep your eyes on the
We are
Chinese
following the
shipbuilding
largest tax and
penalties,
tariff
impact
hikes
on
in
exports and
decades.
imports.
The average family will confront about $3,800 in new costs. Look at one's 401k,
Those
retirement
companies move
savings,
to
education
maximize their
plans, new
profits
home
with
and auto
lower
sales
labor costs.
been
Interesting.
wiped out. The layoffs continue, and the plant closings that the chairman referenced today are continuing as well. Trillions of dollars have been lost just in the last week. The National Review and the Wall Street Journal, hardly left-wing publications, have both warned against the tariffs, and National Review saying today it's time for Congress to assert itself and end this trade
Yeah,
war.
even the
Last night, the
fucking
president said he's now coming for higher drug prices.
really
Between the
crusty
cuts
white
they plan
guys
for our
are
programs
saying
at lower
it.
costs and the rising prices of these tariffs, their giveaways won't make a dent in the higher costs our colleagues have planned, apparently, for the American people. The Wall Street Journal editorial board said it best. This is the dumbest trade war in history. It's not only dumb, it's unconstitutional.
Right.
It started with the Trump administration's unprecedented opposition
Self-inflicted
and imposition of
wound.
emergency tariffs on two of our closest allies. You and I, Mr. Ambassador, know something. We
As a
negotiated
result, we're
USMCA.
closing down the
It
week
was a
of the
good
4th
deal.
of July to save
195
on
Republicans
operating
voted for it,
costs.
196 Democrats
I
voted
hope this
for it.
ends
It was
soon.
a
I
real
hope he fucking
negotiation,
somebody takes
coupled with the
over.
fact that
Somebody
it is to
take
be reviewed
Jesus,
next
take the
year.
wheel.
Instead, we're now imposing tariffs on two of our longtime friends and neighbors. The president has given
There's
himself
no
delegated
one.
powers under the International Emergency Economic
There's
Powers
just
Act.
no
IEPA.
one
It's not a blank
to
check for this president
save
or
this
any president
administration.
to
There's no
utilize
adults
without
in the
congressional
room.
consent. On April 2nd, he stretched it even further to self-delegate more emergency powers. Now he's defying economics and attempting to convince people that the trade deficit that we've had for the last 50 years is suddenly an unusual and extraordinary
I'm going to link the Mar-a-Lago Accord document in the
I've worked
chat,
with all of them during my time on this committee. I know
which I
what they really
believe
think.
is
Whether
a
we or
bit
you
of a
think that this trade
blueprint
deficit is
for
a concern
this
or not,
in some ways.
most serious economists say it is.
As
It's
you've
clear
heard
that
me
it does not
say
meet the
multiple
definition of an
times.
emergency statute. Republicans in Congress are missing in action, afraid to speak up, knowing that they've never embraced tariffs as an economic suggestion. I could never have imagined witnessing this as our Republican colleagues act as though nothing is happening. The Constitution clearly vests trade authority in Congress, and the powers that have been delegated to the President and USTR over the years remain paramount. But the constitutional arrangement has always been based on trust and adherence to the law, and we've had a lot of trust with USTR over the years. That trust is now fractured and on the verge of being permanently broken. I've heard your defense of tariffs, and I expect we'll hear more today. We don't object to all tariffs. Targeting tariffs, the threat of tariffs, it frequently can bring about an outcome that is negotiated and desirable. But to raise prices on the American family and to kill our own exports is unacceptable. Starting a trade war with every other country at the same time is bad strategy, and driving away allies that have stood with us for decades. None of us on this side of the dais understand it. The courts will often see these trumped-up emergencies for the pretext that they are.
I was
and
thinking,
eventually
Lee,
will
that
declare many of them
Mexico
to
and
be
Canada
illegal.
could use a
Trade
Pacific
policy should
shipping lane to
return
bypass
serving
the
America's
road
interest
state.
and being consistent with the law and indeed our Constitution. The people cannot afford more amateur hour
You're a QA,
undertakings.
man.
Trade policy needs to move back into the hands of Congress
They're
for
not.
real negotiation.
They're out
the way it
there.
was
Your
intended.
freight
We can begin by restoring some of
forwarder
that trust
should
that
have
has been so
info.
badly damaged
Hopefully, you have
in the
I'm
last
sure.
week. Mr.
I've read the
Ambassador,
Mall Accord,
we
but
wanna
not all
work
of
with you on
Project
these trade
2025.
agreements.
Yeah,
Closing
well,
the doors to America
I think
is
you've
not sound
probably read
policy.
enough
It
of
can be fixed, but
2025
it's
to
gonna take
know.
putting the rule
Happy
of law
trade wars.
over
I
ego
apologize.
and greed. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Today's sole witness is the United States Trade Representative, Mr. Jameson Greer. The committee has received your written testimony, and it will be made part of the formal hearing record. Ambassador Greer, you have 5
Mealy-mouthed
minutes to deliver your
Greer's
remarks,
here.
and you may begin when you are ready.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the committee, thank you for taking the time today for this hearing. Chairman Smith, I appreciate your opening statement and the details of some of the effects that prior trade policy has had in your district. And Mr. Neal, I appreciate the work we've done in the past and your willingness to continue working with us. Last Wednesday, President Trump declared a national emergency in response to the large and persistent trade deficit that has built up in recent years. This deficit is driven in part by non-reciprocal tariffs, trading barriers, and other economic policies pursued by our foreign trading partners. President Trump imposed tariffs to address this emergency. These measures are aimed squarely at achieving reciprocity and reducing our massive trade deficit. This national emergency.
Okay. No, they're not. Listen to what he just fucking said. These tariffs are aimed squarely at, what did he say? Reciprocity. Bull fucking shit. Okay? And the reason it's bullshit is because not only have they written about the fact that they want to extort resources and other things from countries and rethink trade altogether. Not only is that really the goal, but they can't even decide from one day to the next what they're going to say to each other about it.
Declaration and tariff action is the most significant change in U.S. trade policy since we allowed
It is not
China,
reciprocity
to join the
because
World Trade
they
Organization.
have non-trade
The American working
barriers.
class in particular has suffered concentrated losses from the so-called China shock and other adverse effects of past trade policy and the conditions that give rise to our massive trade deficit. The United States has lost 5 million manufacturing jobs and 90,000 factories since 1994.
1994? Wow, that's a way back machine you got there.
Trade deficit in goods, the largest.
Well, let me show you about what's happened since
of the world.
2015, though.
The United States share of world manufacturing output declined from 28% in 2001 to 17% last year. In the fourth quarter of 2024, U.S. manufacturing as a share of gross domestic product was the lowest it had been in 20 years. During COVID, we were unable to procure semiconductors to build our cars or materials for pharmaceuticals and personal protective equipment. During World War II, we built nearly 9,000 ships. Last year,
I got a
the United
thing,
States
too.
built only 3 ocean-going vessels. Our agricultural trade balance, which historically resulted in
Is he
trade
Mormon?
surpluses for our farmers, was in deficit the last 2 years of the Biden administration and likely will take some time to recover. These are all serious indicators of an economic and national security emergency.
I haven't shopped there since
One important driver of these
urine
negative
was
trends
all
has been
over the
unfair,
table.
unbalanced, and non-reciprocal trade. This includes the
I don't
effect
know
of
why
higher
that's funny,
tariffs
but I
imposed
think
by
it's
other
funny.
countries on the United States, the effect of non-tariff measures that promote other countries' exports and obstruct U.S. exports, and other foreign economic policies favoring overproduction and degrading America's manufacturing capacity. This lack of reciprocity is an important driver of our global trade deficit
Is it?
with particular countries. For example, the European Union can sell us all the shellfish they want, but the EU bans shellfish from 48 states.
Yeah,
The
because
result
we
is a huge
suck.
trade deficit
I'm
in
sorry.
shellfish with
We
the
don't
EU.
have enough
We charge only a
protections about our
2.5%
shellfish.
tariff on ethanol, but Brazil charges us an 18%
This is,
tariff.
remind
The
you
result is we have a
again,
huge
this
trade
is the
deficit in ethanol with
shares
Brazil.
of manufacturing
Our average tariff on
jobs in the
agricultural
United
goods is 5%,
States from
but India's average tariff is
2015 to
39%. You get the picture.
2025.
Our trade deficit, driven by these non-reciprocal
Down during
conditions, is a
COVID,
manifestation
but they're
of the loss of the
higher
nation's
than they
ability
were
to
in
make, to grow, and to build.
2015.
And it's dangerous. And the president recognizes
Period.
the urgency of the moment. On the very first day of his second term,
Period.
President Trump issued a comprehensive memorandum setting out his trade policy
Liars.
direction. And over the past 10 weeks, he has executed on nearly all of these
You're a
priorities.
liar.
He has tightened tariffs on steel and aluminum, imposed new measures on auto and auto parts not made in the United
Stop
States by
lying.
American workers. On April 2nd, he declared his national emergency and imposed the reciprocal tariffs.
BYU, okay. He looks like a Mormon.
President's strategy is
Sorry,
already
I
bearing
have
fruit.
Mormon friends,
Over
so
the
I'm
past
not
few
trying to
weeks,
be weird about
planned
it. I'm
layoffs
just saying
for
he
an auto
looks like a
production ship in
Mormon.
Tennessee has been suspended. That shift continues to operate. Another automaker is hiring additional employees
Bye,
and expanding
sweetie.
overtime to increase
Take
auto
care.
production
Be safe,
in the
Carla.
United States. Companies have announced $4 trillion in new investment.
I'm gonna be
in the
here
United
getting
States.
high.
Nearly 50 countries have approached me to discuss the president's new trade policy
Nearly-
and explore
wait.
how to achieve reciprocity.
Wait.
Several of these countries, such as Argentina, Vietnam, and Israel,
Oh,
have
shit.
suggested they will reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers. These obviously
Okay, wait. I thought it was 70. Today it's 50. Yesterday it was 70. Did 20 drop out of the negotiations? Really? Is that how this works? Or do you just pull numbers out of your anus?
are welcome moves.
Being a
Our
white
large and
guy,
persistent trade
a
deficit has been
mediocre
over 30
white
years in
guy
the making,
elected
and
to
it will not be
cabinet
resolved
is not a
overnight.
flex.
But all of this is certainly
Any
in the right
mediocre
direction.
white guy can
We must
be
move
in the
away from an economy
cabinet.
based
Any.
solely on the financial sector and government
Any. In
spending,
fact,
and we
the
must
more
become an
mediocre,
economy
the
based on
better.
producing real goods and services by American workers in our communities here.
Fucking
This
hell.
adjustment may be challenging at times. This is a moment of drastic and overdue change, but I'm confident that the American people will rise to the occasion as they've
Drastic?
done
Is that what
before.
you
I trust
call
them.
this?
I trust that they can do this.
Okay.
I appreciate this committee's interest in President Trump's trade
Okay.
agenda, though we may not agree on
No.
everything and may have some
What?
severe
Your
disagreements at times.
interest?
It's my hope that our shared interest in doing
It
what's
is
right for
their
the country
responsibility.
will allow us to collaborate in the coming
How
weeks and months.
offensive
Thank you
this
again for your
man
time. I look
is.
forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Ambassador. We'll now proceed to the question and answer session. I'll
Hate
start with
this
the Vice
guy.
Chair of our committee, Mr. Buchanan.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thanks for being here. USMCA, you did an incredible job. And
Now it's $4 trillion?
there, and Ms. Bob Lighthizer as well in that process. But let me just say, being on the committee and being on trade for 10 or 14 years, whatever,
Oops.
we always seem
Sorry.
like we come up short everywhere, even with our friends. Like Japan, I like Japan. I do business.
Oh my God,
I've done
what's
business
happening?
with Japan. Still do some business with my kids with Japan. But you look at the trade deficit, they're monstrous.
Why?
And you look at the number you just said, $1.2 trillion in terms of trade deficit. What are we going to do to change it? And I look back over 10, 12 years, Congress is dysfunctional as it relates to trade. We've done one trade deal. Maybe you might argue there was some supplements that were added. But we're not in the business. We're not engaged. And in terms of what's going forward, now there's this discussion about doing some trade deals. What does that mean? What is that process? Because the process I went through on a couple of trade deals is onerous, and it takes time and effort, a lot of effort by a lot of people to get one deal done, let alone.
Yeah, that article Gal
say
dropped
someone said there's
has
50 deals
information
out
on
there
his
and people have
background
interest.
too,
What does
Neil.
that mean? And what's the process for that?
I know.
Like,
Sanctuary
guess I'm just
jurisdiction is
tired
live
as
too.
Americans
I thought since we
losing.
heard the
Like I said,
mayors
I do
on that
business
one,
in Japan and other
that was
places, but I
that
just
was
hate
the
to
best
see we're always coming
information.
up short on most of these deals.
So I
And look
made-
at our
I
local
made an
area,
executive decision.
Sarasota and Florida, in that region. and I look at
ISB.
tomatoes and vegetables, we're 600% surge, or 600% the surge on us. And we come up, and we've talked about that. We worked on that, last couple,
Stop
3-4
brewing
years.
beer.
And it's there. Everywhere you look, we're short. And now here we are today, and where is this all going, the process? And what's your thoughts about how do we get, to me, idea of trade is at the end of the day, it's somewhat fair. Somewhat fair. It doesn't have to be perfect. Some countries maybe.
Almost
you might
unbelievable,
give them
right, Lee?
smaller country, work with them a little bit more. A lot of countries in
It's
Africa,
all
it's
important,
that's one
butterflies.
thing,
You're so
try to give
right.
some
It's just
advantage.
all
But
important.
These bigger countries, they're killing us. And they've been doing it on a long-term basis. So as the ambassador,
Or none of it
moving
is.
forward on trade, what's your thoughts?
Either it's all important or none of
Well,
it
Mr.
is.
Buchanan, thank you. I think that's the right way to be thinking about this. The president has stated very clearly over the last few days that he is open to negotiate with countries that actually want to pursue reciprocal trade and get their trade deficit down with us, or where we have a surplus, give us the market access that we should have, so we can treat them like they treat us, and that it's better treatment all around.
What?
That's
No,
certainly
no,
part of
no,
this.
it's not.
In the very
Not
near
for
term, I can just
them.
tell you, yesterday I had a
Not
meeting with,
forcing
my
Vietnam to buy
counterparts from the EU, from Korea,
F-150s
from
or
Ecuador,
whatever you
Mexico.
want to
That
call
was
the
after talking
American
to the Senate,
product. I'm not even
for
sure.
4
What do
hours
we
in the morning.
export?
So there are a
Nothing.
lot of countries who understand exactly what the problem is that the president has set out and are willing to talk to us and willing to negotiate. And so I think in the near term, there is an opportunity for these countries, if they want to have more reciprocal trade, to bring down their differential tariffs, bring down their
I'm
non-tariff
going to run out of
barriers.
time. Let me just
Why
ask
would
you,
they?
is-
Why
we
would they
talk about
bankrupt their
these
own countries?
and I heard
What's
there's
in it for
60 of
them?
There's a lot of them that seem to have an interest.
Because they can find other markets. I'm sorry. We're not the monolith we think we
Like
are.
I said, it took 10 years to do one trade deal
That's
here.
it. Yeah, he
And
wants
what's your
countries
sense
to
of what
kiss
that
his
process
ass.
is gonna
That's
be going
exactly
forward?
it. It's just weird. It's a
You get
weird
something negotiated,
flex.
then what?
Well, so for example, in the very long term, for countries that think they want a comprehensive trade agreement or something broader, that's a longer term conversation that we have with Congress. Some of that might require, congressional action, of course, and we would want to be very tied in with you. In the very near term, in terms of the reciprocal tariff, countries are coming in essentially with a paper, right, or with a letter that they've sent me. I mean, Vietnam's a good example where they've just said, here are areas where we think.
Let me just say, because I got a few minutes. I
Yeah,
agree.
okay.
Hopefully that works out, but we
Yeah,
do need to get back
hopefully
in the
that
trade
works out.
business in a serious way with the process that we have here in Congress, because This might work for some
Oh,
deals,
he's a
but not
money
all
whore.
deals.
Oh.
But we have to get serious about trade, and at the end of the day,
Are
it
they
needs to be
suing
fair.
Trump?
It might be a little one way or the other, but if we're buying their stuff, they need to be buying our stuff.
Really?
And that's very
Gene,
clear to me.
what's
I
that?
just feel so frustrated because I've watched
case
this
is
show for
that?
10 years, and we get little done. It's not Democrat or Republicans. It's both parties. We don't take the initiative on these fronts. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
right,
recognize the
well-
ranking member, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Ambassador, you, your predecessor, Bob Lighthizer, and Catherine Tai, the eventual USTR, worked with Congress on USMCA. We had priorities. House Democrats worked with you to come up with what was a pretty good trade agreement.
Elmer Fudd?
Again, almost universally supported in the House and the Senate. We had our priorities: intentional enforcement loopholes, addressing
Silly
access to
putty?
medicines, improving labor and environmental standards, and more. We included novel sunset provisions to give all sides a
Back in
predictable
litigation, but
and
it may
fair
get
way
bounced
to
for
reflect
venue.
and, if needed,
Oh,
course
Court of
correct in the
International
trading
Trade.
relationship.
Oh.
Now the president has imposed global tariffs with purported objectives of leverage to negotiate new trade agreements.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you seeking to negotiate comprehensive trade agreements that address the range of labor, environmental, and corruption concerns? Or is it to seek leverage
It's to
in
extort.
the future of addressing these trade deficits in a more unbalanced or arbitrary manner? We know that trickle-down economics don't
Wait till
work.
you hear what he's probably going to ask
That's
for,
what the
Neil.
administration seems to be doing. We're looking at tax cuts for wealthy people, aggressive deregulation, hollowing out essential government services. And let me, with long history, remind all, when NAFTA was negotiated by this committee, at that time the Republican position was you could not amend a trade agreement. No human rights, no labor provisions, no enforcement mechanisms. That's what brought about the demise of NAFTA and our desire mutually to renegotiate for USMCA. So this idea that this all started in January, on January 20th, is simply not true. These agreements are not going to be worth the paper they're written on if we can say, with a review of USMCA coming up next year, that we're going to impose these tariffs in an arbitrary manner right now, leading to layoffs and plant closures because of them. My office is being inundated with calls about people and their 401k plans. They don't know what to expect. Trillions of dollars of market value being lost
Oh,
even as
right.
we meet.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks.
I understand the desire to
Yep.
address the issue of trade imbalances. It's important for all of us. But some of the suggestions have been clearly exaggerated as we've gone
Exactly.
forward, hyperbolic to be sure. We need to go back to what we did, Mr. Ambassador, with USMCA, with a real solid
Why don't we ask him
negotiation
why the
that led
Penguin
to a
Island was
desirable
on the list?
Outcome. With that, I yield back my time, Mr.
I want to know what his answer is
Thank
to
you.
that.
The Trade Subcommittee Chairman, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ambassador, for availing yourself here today on such important matters, and especially given the context, the broader context of timing. I think I don't have to tell you these are important issues, and I'm grateful for your service.
Speaking of
and
which,
certainly
what's
your
the market
intent
doing?
and desire to move our country forward in many ways. I would say there's no such thing as stagnation in trade. We're either gaining ground or we're losing ground.
Okay.
And I think over the last 4 years, we lost a lot of ground.
Oh,
And during President
you
Trump's
do?
first term, though,
Really?
we made astounding progress
Really?
through the negotiation of USMCA,
You do?
the China Phase 1
Why?
agreement, U.S.-Japan trade agreement. These efforts unlocked new markets, strengthened supply chains, and empowered cooperation with important partners. Over the last 4 years, however, the Biden administration's trade agenda veered from slow walk
I was trying to sing the song in my head.
non-binding frameworks.
I know you
Let
know.
me be very
I know
clear,
you know.
the world was watching then, as it is now, and it was watching as digital trade barriers, which disproportionately impact American companies, were built while USTR actively withdrew from digital trade negotiations at the WTO and in the Indo-Pacific. The world was also watching
It's
as
less
a growing number of
volatile on
countries
the
blocked
market. It's kinda
access
slowed down
for
a little
American
bit.
agriculture with no scientific basis. And
You
as the previous
gaining some
administration
ground? Someone-
let
some little
negotiations
buying
with the
action
UK and
happening?
Kenya simply fade away. This was particularly concerning given
Weird,
Kenya stood
yeah.
to set an example for other AGOA beneficiaries which are capable of negotiating their own bilateral reciprocal agreements. Consumers, producers, manufacturers, service providers, and our partners expected more. I'm encouraged by the growing list of countries seeking trade negotiations with the United States, including the UK.
Ooh, crude
India,
oil is down to
Japan, and South
$56 a
Korea.
barrel.
I'm encouraged to also have you, as USTR, leading these discussions. It's clear President Trump has the world's attention, and it is up to his negotiators to ensure any agreements reached tear down the
Ooh,
barriers
crypto.
affecting American
Bitcoin's at
farmers,
77,000.
ranchers, and
Holy
workers. While I do
shit,
not
that really
expect
took a
perfection in
hit
the short term,
yesterday.
we must find common sense
came down like
solutions which level the
$10,000
playing field for our exporters, ensuring they receive fair treatment we have offered
6 or
foreign
something.
partners, often unreciprocated, for too long.
A lot
Over
of
the last
money.
few months, our Trade Subcommittee has clearly outlined its priorities for trade enforcement and negotiations, I might
That's a
add, in
lot of
bipartisan
money.
fashion, and I hope you will look to the subcommittee's work to inform your agenda moving forward. I expect strong collaboration between USTR and Congress to our trading relationships. During President Trump's first term, he teed up the agreements with the United Kingdom and Kenya. I am eager for these agreements to be brought to fruition.
Oh.
Ambassador Greer, could you elaborate on your engagement with these countries, Kenya and UK?
Trump
How would
says,
you say
"This be
you are
cool.
ensuring our
This is a
partners
great time to
understand what
buy."
progress is needed?
That's what Trump just said.
Thank you, Congressman. Over the past month, I've had a number of conversations with my counterpart in the United Kingdom.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
We've talked about non-tariff barriers in the UK. We've talked about ways to collaborate on technology. We've met frequently in person. We've had phone calls. We've had virtual meetings, and we've discussed how to move the relationship forward on an economic basis. I've certainly expressed my concern that UK has barriers, especially in the ag space, that are very important for us. So that's been made clear to them.
No, but guess
those
what? We
discussions
can't
are on a good
force
footing. With Kenya, I also had
everyone
my
to buy our
counterpart, Trade Minister
shit.
from Kenya in town last week.
That's
and
the
we
way
sat
it
down in my
is.
office, we had a good talk, and he
Unless
said that
we
he wanted to
change the
engage
way
with
we
United
do
States.
things.
He understands our concerns, but he also understands the need to move forward. It was a very fruitful conversation. I look forward to speaking with him again. He wants to work with us. They want to have some kind of agreement with us.
Thank you.
Oh my
I wanna
God,
say that
we had an
USTR is a very
agreement.
lean, agile, and effective agency.
We shouldn't have to have a new
Simultaneous
agreement. We
negotiations
had
with
an
50+
agreement.
countries would require significant bandwidth and expertise, as I'm sure you're aware. The chief IP negotiator, a role which has never been filled, and the chief ag negotiator positions that Congress created in statute to ensure relevant issues important to the American people
Oh
are
my
addressed.
God. Who
When would
gives
you
a
anticipate the
shit?
president will nominate these positions to fill these positions?
Who
And
gives
in
a
the meantime,
shit?
how is USTR responding to the influx of requests and prioritizing negotiations?
So, Congressman, we have a couple of my deputies who have already been announced, and they're doing their rounds on the Hill or about to. We have an ag negotiator and a second deputy who are pending announcements. We're very close on that, so we're happy about that. In the meantime, the nature of these negotiations, the other countries know what the trade barriers are that we're
Okay.
talking about, and we're moving very quickly.
Okay.
We're meeting every day with several
Really?
trade
Which
ministers
ones?
from other countries.
Which ones?
Crack staff at USTR is working very
Which
hard as well
ones?
to put together what
How
would
many?
make sense in terms of
How many have you
near-term
met with?
agreements with respect to the reciprocal trade.
How many
I
have you
think
met
it's
with?
important to note that oftentimes, even if we have a trade agreement with a friendly country, for example, we still need to stay on top of these things, whether it's investor protections in Mexico or beef in Australia, with the expectation of a level playing field. So thank you again for being here. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you.
Mr. Doggett.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador. I have a number of yes/no answers, and if you feel you cannot answer them yes or no, just say you cannot, and I'll move on to the next question. The first of these, yes or no, the Trump tariffs will soon be levied on pharmaceuticals from abroad.
I'd like to discuss that in more detail with you, sir.
Is that true or not?
Yeah.
The president, he wants to get manufacturing production back here.
How?
So he's going to conduct an investigation
How?
to see what's appropriate in terms of
So
tariffs.
he hasn't decided to impose them as he said he would last night at the Republican fundraiser.
He said that he will impose them. Now,
Thank
what the
you.
extent of
I
that
think the
is
answer
subject
is
to
yes.
investigation.
Yeah, why don't we
Spending
have
my
some
time.
information on it?
A simple question, Ambassador. Yes or no, do you agree with the president's senior Trump trade advisor, Peter Navarro, that higher tariffs are tax cuts?
Sir, I don't get involved in the tax discussions, but we know tariffs have a revenue effect for sure.
You
Oh.
think tariffs are tax cuts?
I think that tariffs are
don't
an
wanna answer
imposition on
that.
foreign goods that can protect American workers and American
Oh,
products.
fuck
And
you.
again, yes
That's
or no,
not.
do you agree with
That's
senior
not an
trade advisor
answer.
Peter Navarro that as Americans watch their savings erode and the stock market losses approaching $7 trillion, that what Americans need is patience?
I think we all need to work through this period as we try to reshore and get over the $1.2
Why?
trillion deficit.
Do you
We didn't
agree-
have
do you
to.
agree with Commerce Secretary Howard
we
Lutnick,
didn't have to. This was
that, We're not
self-inflicted.
going to reverse course no matter how much the markets implode.
Oh, my
And that
God.
these tariffs will be permanent.
Well, the president has directed that we're negotiating with willing partners, and that's where I'm keying my guidance from.
You
okay.
just referenced the United Kingdom, and you have claimed that these trade deficits require these tariffs. Is it correct that large Trump tariffs were imposed on imports from close allies like the United Kingdom and Australia, even though we have a sizable trade surplus with each of those allies?
Yeah.
There's a global deficit, and those surpluses should probably be larger because of the barriers.
Oh my
Again, sir,
God.
can you simply answer
Oh
yes or
my
no? Did
God.
we impose tariffs on allies with whom we have a trade surplus, not a trade deficit?
We impose tariffs on every country because it's a
So the
global
answer is
problem.
yes, even though you don't want to say it, apparently.
Yeah.
Let me ask you also
You
about
can't seem to say
experiences
it.
during the first Trump administration. Because at that time, there was a discussion about the impact of the retaliatory tariffs from China on farmers. And as a result of that retaliation, there was a significant amount of farm welfare payments that were paid. We know this time that the tariffs and the retaliation are much broader, like the Chinese substituting Brazilian soybeans for American soybeans. Will American taxpayers be asked
Hey,
once
Jamaica,
again
how
to
you
finance
doing?
welfare payments to
Hi,
farmers
Garth.
that lose foreign markets? Yes or no?
It's not clear yet whether that will be necessary.
Might have to and might not. Similarly, last time there were concerns about the selective nature and the exceptions that were made to these tariffs. And it seems that those who hired Republican contributors, lobby firms, did much better on exceptions.
That's right. What about what happened to the
exception
fentanyl?
process was criticized by the Government Accountability Office. Can I be assured that if one of my businesses
What happened to that?
hires a
a Republican lobbyist and contributor who can get a table down at Mar-a-Lago that they will not get an exception to these tariffs or an exclusion?
There are no exceptions or exclusions to this
No
program.
exceptions.
Ooh, no exceptions or
You know,
exclusions.
it's
You
not
heard
one
it
of my
here.
regular allies, but the
Is it
National
bad I'm
Taxpayers
getting
Union,
Zillow
sent me a
postings for
question
local
yesterday, and I'll
places?
pose it to you as they did to me.
Ooh,
They
you
note that the
you
United
should,
States
just
has
for
run trade deficits
funly.
for 48 straight years, during which time the U.S. economy has grown by 255%
I see a beach
in
in
real
your
terms.
future.
These decades of
Let's
trade
find a
deficits have
beach somewhere,
corresponded with
Lee.
increases
I'm in.
American wealth and household incomes that far exceed the progress in Canada, China, and the European Union. Do you think that this growth in American wealth as a result associated with deficits is something that constitutes a national emergency?
The giant and massive persistent trade deficit that Biden left us with is an emergency. It's not like the small deficit from the 60s
Biden left
when we
us
had auto
with?
workers
What
here
does
making
he have to
production.
do with
We've
it?
offshored
How
all
do you
this
do that
stuff,
in 4 years?
Mr. Doggett, and we
What?
are really in an emergency situation.
What?
We're not passing
Oh,
much.
the beach in
we seem to
Jamaica,
have done much better than in the
yes.
Gilded Age, which the president
Oh,
prefers.
that sounds
I would just
so
say that on the
nice.
eve of his inauguration, the president
I
promised
hope
to bring
you're
prices
enjoying the
drastically
beach down there,
and there's
Garth.
nothing that you've said in your answers or
Oh,
my answers
thanks,
to
love.
me today
We'll
that would
find
give
that beach
Americans any
someday.
assurance to believe anything other than that the prices will continue
Someday
to
I'll go to
soar
the beach.
and their savings will continue to shrink. The president's lies continue to cost the American people dearly. I yield back.
He's right.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman.
Ugh.
Ambassador, thanks for being here.
Ugh.
There's a quote in the movie Tora, Tora, Tora from Admiral Yamamoto, and he says, "What I fear is that we have awakened a
Those are nice
sleeping
red
giant."
glasses.
Thank God we've looked around at what's happening in the world. Twice America has gone to World War to save the world.
Uh-huh.
We did it in World War I, we did it in World War II. And after World War II,
What is
the people
this
that we
guy all
saved and some of the
upset
people that we fought against were absolutely devastated. They had no way to build themselves back up again. So what
Is this
did
guy a radio
America
host?
do? We opened our markets.
Yeah, Doggett was good.
Because we have always been the most generous people
When
in the
am
world.
I coming to Jamaica?
We're always the first
Oh,
responder, no
I don't
matter
know.
what happens
Probably
anywhere
not
in the
very
world.
soon.
Who's there first? It's always the Yanks.
I don't go anywhere. I can't even get out to my beach in
We
LA.
have ceded so much market share. We have
The
rebuilt
Chinese
for
shipbuilding
most of the
penalties
world
are something
an
Trump
economy
gives
that
a
they
big
never could
speech
have
about.
achieved on
Bring
their
back
own.
coal. I know. 14 states
Now
don't have
we're
any
facing a
coal-fired
situation
power
with all those who
station.
we've helped
So dumb, Jim, isn't it?
don't like us playing in their market. They love coming to America, but they don't want America coming to them.
Because we
They
have
make it very
shitty
hard for us to do
food.
trade with them, whether it's through tariffs or barriers, which our manufacturers can't meet. And we sit here
Well,
today
because we allow our
trying to make this a
manufacturers to
political
take shortcuts,
event
and other
instead of a
countries don't want
country-saving
products
event.
with taking shortcuts.
I come from a little town
I'm
called Butler,
sorry,
Pennsylvania.
that's
Butler
something
one
we
time
have
was
to
a
get
home
our. We have to
of a steel mill.
understand.
Still is. We built railroad cars. Pullman was there.
Oh my
We
God.
built the first Jeep. We were known as that town. Blue-collar town. People get up in the morning, work hard, and what they look
I'm just
for
going
is
to
that
show you
chance
the
to get some overtime.
manufacturing jobs again.
Last summer, we became known as the town with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. We're resilient.
Oh my
We always
fucking
bounce
God.
back. We always will bounce
Stop.
back. And I got to tell you, I have
You're a
some statements
baby. You're just a
from the people
baby.
that actually work every day, get up and go to work, and they're
Here's the
looking at a
manufacturing
market
jobs
that
for
they're
the last
constantly
10
losing
years.
market share in.
Whoops. Oh, shit.
And they wonder, who is going to stand up and do something? Who's finally going to talk about?
I'm actually going to mute him. I'm going to mute this motherfucker. And I'm going to yet again explain. Holy fuck, I'm exhausted. I know. I'm going to tell you again. This is manufacturing jobs for the last 10 years, 2015. COVID. Bonk. Out of COVID. Oh, well, look, we're higher than in 2023. We were higher in manufacturing jobs than we've been in 10 years. And then we came down a little bit, you know. God knows what's going to happen now. But this is the share of U.S. manufacturing jobs. Okay? So while we're not building airplanes anymore for, you know, like the war machine right now, per se, although we certainly do, it is a completely different world. Well, I mean, one of our making, but it is a completely different world. So it would make sense that not necessarily all the same level of manufacturing that was happening in the 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s is happening today. Because it's replaced by other things and we become we've become more of a service economy. That's it. And the way you reinvigorate manufacturing in America is not to shut the spigot off so that people will lose jobs and factories will indeed close because they won't have any customers. Because other countries, rather than paying tariffs, will find other trading partners. And sure, we'll keep some of them. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you thought COVID was bad for finding shit on the shelves, get ready, bitch. Get ready to grab your butts and cry because you're not going to find any shit on your shelves. I'm not even going to listen to him. I could care less whether you're, yeah. Wake up. You wake up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here. I believe in our great country. I love our country. I put a uniform on and served in combat
faster,
for our great country. And I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about policy, trade policy today. And both the chairman and the ranking member talked about the USMCA. I was honored and privileged to be on that negotiating team.
All you chuds who think that this guy is so great and these tariffs are so great, you're so fucking stupid, it's hilarious.
Ever. And I'd like to submit this article.
I saw Angie keeps putting up all this shit for those of you who know Pirate Angie.
Now the president is shredding that deal,
useless
creating
bitch.
Chaos in the world economy. The numbers speak
there
for
is
themselves.
so little understanding.
$3,800 higher prices for American consumers.
So little understanding of what's about to hit these motherfucking chuds and us.
Savings, tens of billions
I can't
in lost
wait. I hope I
agricultural
see the
sales
tears
for farmers.
I can't
the
wait.
Trump administration says that the tariff
I'll gladly
taxes
suffer
will
just to see
raise
them
$6
cry.
trillion over 10 years.
I mean,
which
if we
would be
all
the
have to suffer,
biggest tax increase
I might as well get some
in our
enjoyment
history.
out of it.
The message coming out of the administration isn't at all coherent. I'm having trouble, my constituents are having trouble understanding this. He puts a tariff on some 180 other countries, no tariff on Russia or Belarus or North Korea, and he's
we have
putting
sanctions with
tariffs
them.
on UK, Ukraine, France, an island that only has penguins on it, but not a country that is clearly working against us and has we have a trade deficit with. It's confusing in every instance. He says that tariffs are here to stay, to support domestic manufacturing and to raise revenue to pay for tax giveaways to people who really don't need that tax giveaway help. And at the same time, he's saying that tariffs are part of a negotiation.
I think Dems need to do a better job of tying the tax bill to this tariff
I'd like to know
plan.
which it is.
It's not clear enough.
It's not coherent at all, and I'd like to submit for the record documentation of his confusing priorities. And Mr. Ambassador, I'm at a loss to what I tell my constituents. As Mr. Neal said about his constituents calling, my phone's ringing off the hook. I'm getting emails every day. I see people on the street, they're asking. They want to know, a $6 trillion tax on the U.S. economy? What do you tell people when they ask that question? $3,800 higher prices for the average American family? What do I tell my constituents when they ask that question? The major agriculture, I have an ag district. My major agricultural producer just lost all access to the #1 foreign market to which they export their product. Not only has Canada closed the market, Canada has taken every U.S. product that my constituents send there off the shelves and off their web pages. And what do I tell them when they say, I've been working decades to build that market share and it's all gone that quick? What do you tell them? What do I tell my constituents who say, I have a container that it's already paid for of products coming in and I will not be able to afford the tariff when that container lands? What do I tell my constituents who say, we've lost trillions of dollars in our 401ks? How do I make that up? What do I tell my constituents when they say, my kids are getting ready to go to college and my 529 is in the dumps? How am I going to pay for my kids' education? Wait, things are going to get better? Their kids are going to school now. They can't wait for stuff to get better. And pharmaceuticals, we had a hearing in the subcommittee yesterday on pharmaceuticals. And this tariff war is pricing pharmaceutical consumers out of the market. A 25% tax or tariff on pharmaceuticals? How are my constituents going to be able to afford their medications? This doesn't make any sense. This is an unprovoked tariff war that's costing us a lot of money with no confusing answer as to what we're doing, where we're going, or when we're going to get there. I yield back.
Mr. Schweikert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ambassador, just so I can clear my head, what's our trade balance with North Korea?
I don't think we have any trade. There's an embargo. A lot of those countries have embargoes
and
already.
that's so the rhetorical thing of you didn't tariff these countries, that we don't trade with them. But there's the problem is, sometimes our rhetoric doesn't have any basis in fact. Mr. Ambassador, the folks sitting behind you, is this your team?
This is our congressional staff who's been up meeting with all your
Okay,
officers.
so that's congressional staff. Where I do have a concern, let's say both the left and the right, we agree we want to move as much robustness back to the United States. Whether it be a manufacturing renaissance, whether it be in the service industry, those things. Okay. When you're doing your formulas, when you're advising the White House, others, do you spend some time on infrastructure issues? One of my personal fixations is pharmaceutical manufacturing, just looking at the steps in these things. We actually had testimony in this room 2 years ago. And it was, part of the discussion was, okay, we'd like to make precursor inputs into, small molecule drugs, except it produces some really nasty toxic byproducts. And the United States doesn't have mitigation. We don't have ultra high temperature incineration, those things. So you want to build a policy to re-domicile pharmaceutical manufacturing in the United States.
Republicans making sense.
With your staff say, oh, but guys, we don't have the infrastructure mechanics to deal with the byproducts, the EPA permitting process to actually get the permits. Maybe we should approach Congress and say, hey, guys, I need you to help us get these things so we can actually, whether it be through tariffs or other incentives, move them. Do you spend time analyzing the infrastructure realities we have to actually be able to produce these products?
So yes, Congressman, absolutely. And when we talk about
Really?
trade policy, which is in the news today because of the president's
What?
recent action, we're also talking about favorable tax policy, which is important for pharmaceutical production. We talk about permitting and environmental policy. All of these things go together. That's why President Trump had such a successful first term in terms of the economy, because all of it moved together. And we talk about
So
that.
what's happened in the last week? Would I find that somewhere? Look, in many ways, I'm finding myself, I support the ultimate goal. I'm just wondering if
he's
the
trying.
sequencing has been done with the details that are necessary to make it successful. And then I've been waiting for the team.
What do you think that is, Mr. Schweikert?
David, I need you to get off your
Why do you think
backside,
that
and
is?
We need this on permitting reform, or we need this on certain regulatory issues. And I haven't seen that input yet on. Do you see where I'm
Why
going?
do you
If
think that
this
is,
the
Mr.
ultimate goal,
Schweikert?
How do we get there? Is it straight through?
Do you know there
tariff
isn't
regime,
any? Do
or
you
we
know
have to
there
have our
isn't
series
any?
of sequencing before this actually happens?
Why don't you ask Nutlicker?
I think we certainly would welcome Congress supporting the reshoring of
my
manufacturing. I think, unfortunately, during the last administration,
Oh
we saw
my
a lot of
God,
studies by the Biden administration on how to
stop. You're
reshore
such a
pharmaceuticals,
simp.
which is valuable. But we could kind of do studies
This
for
guy
years
is
and
just a
years and never
simp.
reshore this.
So you have the information. So you have the study. So you know what we need to do.
Oh my God.
And the president can do what he can do, right? He doesn't have the power of the purse, but he can create incentives to drive
But
people
this
back
is beyond sense.
manufacturing here.
Even
This
the
is
infrastructure
nonsense.
mitigation. It's not enough if to say the company
90
wants
days,
to start.
not to the
get it
level of
back here in
detail,
our
not
country.
in less than 90
You can't get the
days.
permit.
And that's why we're working closely with other economic cabinet members. We're talking about the importance of this. And I'll tell you,
Nutlicker,
Zeldin and others,
told ya.
they're out there. They're trying to
Oh,
expedite permits. They're
EPA,
trying to make sure that
Zeldin, yeah,
regulations are
okay.
appropriate to allow the
Oh my
country,
God.
reshoring we need to.
So, Ambassador, what do you need from us? What can we do? The ultimate punchline here is, what do you need from those as the members of Congress who actually support the ultimate goal? A little concerned about the path, but ultimate goal.
My God,
What do you
little
need
concerned?
from us? And please bring that to us so we can actually do our work.
I have plenty of ideas. I'm happy to talk to the White House Office of Legislative Affairs about that. I think there's a lot Congress could do if they would like to.
We look forward to those documents. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They
Mr.
don't
Larson.
exist, Schweikert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Ambassador Greer. Welcome to the committee. Thank you for all your service. I just have a direct question because I'm a little puzzled. Being a great James Bond fan, I was kind of wondering what this whole deal is to Russia with love and why, as has been pointed out, that on April the 2nd, the president excluded Russia, Belarus,
Come
Cuba,
on.
and North Korea from
Please
the new
stop.
global tariff.
Larson.
The Treasury sector said Russia wasn't on the list because they already imposed sanctions to prevent most U.S.-Russia trade, making higher tariffs unnecessary. The question's kind of twofold. Is that the case with Russia, Belarus, Cuba, and North Korea? While trade in goods has decreased, trade with Russia is still significant. Last time I checked, it's like $3.5 billion, well above the volumes of trade for many smaller countries that my colleagues have already been through that are impacted by this. So first, was this an oversight, or is the president trying to reinvigorate trade with Russia?
So there's no effort to reinvigorate trade with
I
Russia.
think they
Congress did the right
don't
thing a couple
exist.
years ago and revoked permanent normal trade relations with Russia, so put in the bad category. And so Belarus, Russia, North Korea, they already have their own high tariffs already in a category that Congress has
So
established.
it doesn't matter. They're not part of this
Well,
system.
it does matter. They already have these high tariffs. They don't have permanent normal trade relations. We have normal trade relations with these others. And I think if there's
So
trade
why
with
are the
Russia,
penalties that much more, why are the tariffs that much more higher on other country and allies than they are in Russia? Because we're already doing
That's a
enough
good
with
point.
Russia?
No, it's because in the sanctions law, there's always an exclusion for agricultural products, and I think that's the only type of trade we really have with Russia. But all of those folks, they're sanctioned. They're
Then why
subject
aren't
to
there
embargoes
tariffs
of one
on
type or
it?
another. Congress revoked
I mean,
permanent
more
normal trade
so.
relations, and that's certainly the right answer for those folks. We should not have normal trade relations with those countries.
Well,
Excuse
let me
me?
ask you this then. Would you commit here that if we see trade increasing from last year, that USTR will take action to increase tariffs on Russia?
Well, I'm happy to monitor that and advise the president accordingly. I agree with you.
I'm
on
sorry,
that.
what?
I'm happy to monitor that and advise the president
What
accordingly.
does that
I
mean,
agree
you're
with
going
you.
to monitor that?
Well, you asked if we would see if the would change, if we would see if the trade level would change. I'm agreeing with you. I'm happy to see if the trade level
And
with
if
Russia
it,
changes.
if it does increase, you will add additional tariffs?
Well, it's the president's choice, but I'll advise him, and I'll say this is affecting the trade deficit. We should consider this.
So
for sure.
does that mean you would advise him to
We should consider
raise
this.
the tariffs with Russia?
Well, I don't typically give out my advice to the president out in public, but I agree
Well,
with
I'm
you
sure
that
the
it's something
American
to watch.
people would love to know, and as would members of Congress. I mean, you got to kind of admit it is just if you casually follow the news, you're not
hello,
a member of this
GB.
committee. And the relationship with Russia is kind of bizarre in terms of what it is between President Trump and President Putin, and
Hi, Anita. Good to
why
see you,
this
darling.
relationship exists. So you can imagine. I don't know. Have you ever been to Augie and Ray's?
No, I haven't.
You should. It's a great spot in East Hartford. It's right next to Pratt Whitney Aircraft, et cetera. And they're deeply concerned about this. And they always say, hey, what's going on with Russia and what's going on with the president and Putin? So I'm going to be able to tell them, don't worry. I spoke with Ambassador Greer. And currently, Russia's apparently paying enough. Their sanctions already are sufficient. But if we see greater activity and great trade amounts, we're going to make sure that tariffs are levied on them. Is that a fair thing to say?
Well, on the last part, I can't make the president's decision for him.
He really wants you to
But
say
you would
it.
recommend that you increase tariffs on them.
Well, I'm not going to disclose my recommendations.
So
to the
we're not going to
president.
recommend, we're not going to say, see, at Augie and Ray's, they would say, hey, come on, you're BSing us now. We know what's going on here. But with that, thank you, Ambassador, and appreciate your time. I yield back.
Mr. LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Greer, welcome back. Thank you for your prior service under the last Trump administration and all the work you put in on USMCA, and happy to see you in this new position. I wanted to talk about agriculture and get your take on how tariffs affect agriculture. My district that I'm proud to represent is the 10th largest ag district in the country in terms of corn and soybean production. The #1 industry in the state of Illinois is agriculture. People are surprised by that. Illinois has led the nation the last 12 years in soybean production. We've been second in corn production the last 6 years. And my district, we load up a lot of commodities on barges on the Illinois and the Mississippi River. They go down to New Orleans, they get offloaded, and they go all around the world. About 40% of the corn and soybeans in my district, again, go to places all across the globe. And so markets and customers are very, very important. And I will just say at the outset that I appreciate what President Trump is doing in terms of addressing longstanding trade deficits and bringing down barriers to trade, and also your commitment for looking for new trade deals and entering negotiations to address tariff and non-tariffs across the globe. But as I talk to my farmers, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, because when we get into a trade war, usually the first pawn in the trade war is agriculture. And as we look at the timeline and chronology moving forward, Ambassador Greer, what would you tell my farmers in terms of that uncertainty and anxiety that they're feeling right now?
Actually,
Well,
it
the
looks
first thing
really
to
good
note
on
is that,
him.
almost
Almost good
all
on
countries have
him.
announced that they're not going to retaliate against the United States. Obviously, we have China that has made its own choice. They've always given us a hard time. They've always limited our access over there, and they're doubling down on that path. It's an issue of Chinese agency. Indonesia, India, so many other countries have affirmatively said we're not retaliating. And those are actually many of the countries that are coming to us and saying we're willing to take down our tariffs. Vietnam unilaterally decided to reduce its tariffs on
Boy,
apples,
we're
cherries,
really
certain
using
corn
that
products,
Vietnam.
ethanol, et cetera. So we're already seeing the kind of movement we would expect, and that's something that I think is an important message to our farmers.
Most
Thank
U.S.
you for that.
soybeans to
I want to
China.
switch topics to digital trade. And I believe we have a tremendous opportunity in digital trade, and the United States must lead in setting global rules and standards. We can't allow non-market
apple
adversaries
doll
like
is
China in
so
particular
great.
to set these standards and further manipulate the digital trade agenda. Unfortunately, under the Biden administration, we ceded this authority, and we've seen the consequences of
See if we have
discriminatory
anybody
policies
else in the
hurting
scene.
U.S.
Is anybody
innovation.
else here today?
I think we can be aggressive, working with our like-minded partners and allies to build on the progress made during President Trump's first administration, including the digital agreement with
no, it's
Japan
not a
and
good
the
one.
robust standards set in the digital chapter of USMCA, which is, in my view, kind of the gold standard for future trade agreements. What can you say today, Ambassador Greer, on how you view the expanding U.S. leadership in digital trade moving forward in this administration?
Well, I think it's a huge comparative advantage that we have. Our digital commerce companies and digital trade companies are the most competitive in the world, and they're competing with ones from China. And in that competition, we have to win. And if I have other countries discriminating against our champions, that's bad for America, it's bad for our companies and workers, and it's bad for the world. And I know we're having a national
It's not-
conversation.
well, apparently the
politically on
world's
how to
okay with
regulate,
it.
digital tech, et cetera. But in no case can we allow discrimination to undermine our competitive advantage here.
Thank you, Ambassador Greer. I yield back.
And yeah, we don't
I now
have any
recognize Mr.
partners.
Davis for 5 minutes.
Who's our
Mr. Chairman,
partner?
and thank you, Ambassador.
We pissed them all
It
off.
is important that
Oh,
the
wait,
executive
hold on.
administration
I got to get the
respect
wig
and
off of that.
recognize
Hold
that
on, I don't want the wig on
Congress has
him.
authority over trade agreements, and its purpose is to guide and/or direct the administration on the content of that agreement. Unfortunately, what we have seen from the Trump-Musk administration in the trade and tariff space over the past month has been anything but comprehensive, well-balanced, and measured. In fact, the president's recent approach to advancing his America First trade policy has been confusing, chaotic, inconsistent, and at times even contradictory. Ambassador Greer, I represent companies in the vehicle supply industry
Agreed,
that
Jim.
assemble and produce parts for the automotive industry. The vehicle supplier industry employs more than 930,000 people directly and 4.8 million indirectly. Individuals across the country representing the largest sector of manufacturing jobs in the United States. Tariff impact on the automotive industry is massive and may result in shutting down businesses within the automotive supply chains, which will harm the U.S. economy as a whole. The automotive supply chain is not agile in its ability to make changes. However, the motor vehicle parts sector and many others have adjusted supply chains to support more regional production. My question is, since it would take years to adjust production and supply chains back to the U.S., in the meantime, the auto sector will be hit with multiple layers of tariffs that will soak up any free cash that could be used for the very investments in the U.S. that the administration is seeking. Is the administration planning any relief for auto part suppliers and the auto industry? And what other help can the government provide to these suppliers due to the most recent changes in tariffs?
So, Congressman, the autos action is under the Department of Commerce, but I'll make two brief points. First of all, right now, if the parts comply with USMCA rules of origin, of the agreement we all agreed to 5 years ago, they continue to come across duty-free. So that's a good development. And second, the United Auto Workers are huge supporters of the action on autos and auto parts. They put out a
Are
long
you
statement
kidding
supporting
me?
this long overdue issue. We have Chinese
That's your-
vehicles
that's
flooding
your
global markets.
flex?
The only reason they're not in this market is because President Trump put a tariff on Chinese automobiles in 2018, and the Biden administration kept them and put them in place. It's really critical that we protect our auto industry, and the auto workers understand that. We've accounted for parts that have U.S. content and content from Canada and Mexico, and we have to
Yeah, I
be very
know.
deliberate about doing this to save this industry.
It's the
Thank
House.
you. And let me ask you, have you conducted an analysis on
It's
the
the
net
House.
impact
The House
of
gets to
tariffs
talk to him now.
across different sectors of the economy? And what steps is your office taking to mitigate negative employment effects?
So with respect to,
Yeah,
we have a lot
Sean
of
does not
historical data
speak for
about
all of
tariffs. For example, the
UAW.
International Trade Commission, they put out a report following the Trump first-term tariffs, and they found that there were positive effects on domestic production in terms of employment and better profits for domestic production.
I knew who
we
you
know in
meant.
the first term when we put tariffs in place, inflation
I always
went
think
down,
about
unemployment went
Sinn
down, real
Féin.
median household income went up. We expect that with
Oops,
good
I was
energy
backwards.
policy, good trade policy, good tax policy, good permitting
I
regulatory
recognize
processes,
you.
this
is
can
a
all rise
werewolf.
together to again
Werewolf
lead to
Max.
an increase in real median household income for Americans.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you
what I
very
call
much,
you.
Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Werewolf Max.
The gentleman yields back and now recognize Mr. Estes for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ambassador Greer, for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to meet
Oh,
with
here
us.
we go.
Ambassador, I just
You
welcome
need
you
some
again to the
hair.
Ways and Means Committee, which has the sole jurisdiction for trade issues in the House. It's great to have you here working with the administration that prioritizes free and fair trade, unlike the previous administration, which placed pretty much zero emphasis on trade enforcement and on new deals with foreign nations, in effect putting America last.
Is that
I
true?
represent Kansas 4th District,
How do
the
you
capital
prove
of the
that?
world,
Prove that,
which
sir.
is a microcosm of the United States. We have large aerospace manufacturing core in Wichita, as well as other manufacturing operations, and a widespread agriculture base in the surrounding rural counties. This cross-section of the country every day works to
Yeah,
feed,
doesn't
clothe,
it? It
and
looks
provide
good on
energy for the
him.
entire
Like
world.
this could
Additionally,
work
skilled
for
workers who
him.
manufacture airplanes and
Somebody
aerospace
needs to send him an
components,
Amazon
build
wig.
computer instruments that power our devices.
Yeah, that's why they
And it's an
canceled the
understatement to
CHIPS
say that
Act.
our
They
district
want
benefits from
restoring and
free and
manufacturing.
fair
Hi,
trade.
Karen.
Because when Kansas compete on an even
Yeah,
term, we
reshoring,
win.
restoring.
Aviation
It's
industry has
all the
benefited from
same.
historical zero-for-zero tariff with foreign nations since the 1980s. Nearly every single airplane around the globe contains at least one component made in Kansas. In contrast, our agriculture sector
Really?
faces stiff barriers with foreign nations. As illustrated in your testimony, ethanol product produced in Kansas faces a steep 18% tariff in Brazil, while the same
18?
Brazilian product is only
That
charged a tariff of 2.5%. This type of unfair, excessive tariff
my
on U.S.
Lord.
exports is undefensible. Because of this, I
Yeah,
support
he
the
was trying to
administration's
clean up a
efforts to reduce the
pandemic,
tariff barrier
but still
placed on
built a
U.S.
great
products
economy.
by
Hard to
foreign
prioritize
competitors.
trade
And
over
I'm pleased to see the
survival.
number of
Exactly.
countries, 70 plus or so, that have mentioned
Seemed
that
to
they
be
want to make a deal.
okay.
I'd also like to discuss some non-tariff barriers that functionally disadvantage
People weren't
the U.S. in
complaining
comparison to
about
our
not
trading
being able to
partners.
find
I've been
used
a vocal proponent
cars
of digital services
or
taxes,
whatever,
DSTs. These
like they were
extraterritorial taxes enacted
before.
by many countries, including France, Canada, and UK, are highly targeted on U.S. businesses and innovators. Many of my colleagues agree
We
that
had
DSTs
toilet
are a revenue
paper.
grab by countries that restrict technology, innovation, and envy American companies that are successful in this space. Additionally, in a recently released 2025 National Trade Estimate Report on foreign trade barriers, I was pleased to see the USTR include Germany's extraterritorial assertion of retroactive taxes, known as the Section 49. This law has been dormant for the past 100 years, but disproportionately targets U.S. businesses. These examples aren't from our adversaries, they're from our friends. And these are just a few examples of why it's so important to level the playing field and open markets for American manufacturers and producers, the very effort that you're trying to put in right now. Regarding Germany's Section 49, I believe reaching a resolution on this issue is important. In consulting with Treasury and IRS, it's my understanding that they've engaged with some affected taxpayers and German officials on this issue, but it's yet to be resolved. What's your strategy in terms of working on this issue with Germany, and will you work with me and my staff and the committee as we pursue a resolution for this issue?
First of all, I always like talking to you, Congressman, because as you know, I lived in Wichita for 2.5 years and served at the Air Base when I was in the Air Force and had a child born there. So we have a
That's weird.
nice connection there.
I know. It's all Biden
I will
bashing,
work with
like,
Secretary
whatever.
Bessent on this issue with
Get
Section
over
49.
yourselves.
I've had some good interactions with my German
By the way,
counterpart in
egg
the past couple of
prices are
weeks,
higher
and
than
we're
they
happy to
were
work
a
with you
year
on this to
ago.
see what the best way forward is.
Okay.
Yep. Well, thank you. And
So he
I know
hasn't
some
done
of
that great a
crosses over,
job
as you
on
mentioned,
egg
with
prices.
Treasury
They're coming
Secretary
down
and
from
the
an
issues
all-time
there.
high in
There's so many
February.
things moving on in your
So fuck him and his egg
direct sphere of
prices.
influence
That's a
with
big
all
lie,
activities
too.
trying to make sure that there's free and fair
Disinformation.
trade for American companies and American competitors, and I just applaud your efforts in helping make putting America first in these efforts.
Oh, fuck
Thank you. And I
you,
yield back.
Nazi.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Ms. Sanchez for 5 minutes.
Thank you. As the ranking member of this committee's Trade Subcommittee, I want to say a few words about President Trump's latest scheme, his so-called reciprocal tariffs. Let's start by making one thing perfectly clear. These tariffs are not reciprocal. But don't just take my word for it. According to the Wall Street Journal, the president's tariff scheme is not reciprocal, nor is it based on measuring foreign trade barriers. Before getting into Trump's latest scheme, I just want to note that I recently returned from a NATO bureau meeting, and I witnessed firsthand how President Trump's chaotic trade decisions have damaged our global leadership with our allies. And it's appalling to see how Trump is treating our friends and allies compared to how he's treating our adversaries. It was mentioned that under this tariff scheme of Trump's, Russia gets a free pass, while our allies, including those who stood with us after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, are hit with increasing tariffs. Russia's tariff rate is 35%, and we have hit our trading partners with far higher tariffs. It's sad to say that our NATO allies don't trust us anymore, so his scheme isn't just damaging our economy, it's actually undermining our longstanding security partnerships around the world. And in addition to undermining our relationships with our allies, Trump's scheme imposes randomly high tariffs on numerous countries, including our FTA partners.
Wow, that's
For instance,
interesting,
under the
Neil. I didn't
Korea-US
realize
Free
that.
Trade Agreement, Korea
Cool.
eliminated tariffs on most goods from the United States. Last year, Korea's effective tax rate for goods imported from the United States was less than 1%, yet Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on South Korea. Trump repeatedly insisted that he wanted to impose the same tariffs
maybe
on other
it's not the
countries
point.
as
Maybe
they impose on
reciprocity
us.
isn't the point.
And I want to read a quote from the president.
Maybe.
Quoting him, "On trade, I have decided for purposes of fairness that I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them no more and no less." But as we now know, that is not true. That is completely false. And because it isn't true, the Trump
Yeah,
administration
they do need to
came up
move
with a
off the
fake
Russia thing. There's a
formula
200%
to
tariff on
justify
Russian
this
aluminum and
tariff
other
scheme.
critical items.
Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't take a
Thanks,
genius
Lee.
to figure out that
Thanks
the
for
trade
that
studies
media
called
literacy.
for by the president in January.
I agree. They need to
and
get
the
off of
so-called
it. Who gives a
reciprocity
shit?
rationale
There's
of his
plenty to
latest,
complain about.
Trade scheme are completely bogus.
My
It's
God.
made up. To understand why Trump
Onshoring
is pursuing this crazy
pharmaceuticals?
scheme,
What's going to
you
happen
need to
to
understand
drug
his MO.
prices in the
First,
next 9 months?
threatens a huge tariff.
Right?
Second, he tries to use those tariffs as leverage to extort countries, many
Yes.
of them are allies. And third, he declares anything that they promise as a huge victory, even when it's an insubstantial deal meant only to appease Trump and his cronies. And fourth, repeat this corrupt practice over and over again. This is all intended to distract and divert the media's attention. I urge everybody to take a step back from the daily
Also,
chaos
I
that
hear
comes
Russia
out of the
might have
White
helped a
House
little bit in our
to
World War
consider the
II
bigger picture
victory.
here. Trump should not fool around with the economy.
Yes.
American families should not be forced to pay higher prices to fund tax
Yes, Lee,
cuts
you
for the
do.
rich.
I need
Which
you to
leads me
testify in
suspect
front of
that
Congress,
These tariffs are not
please.
temporary in nature because they need the revenue to give tax
The lounge
cuts
will send
to the
you
wealthy.
as their
Trump
delegate.
shouldn't fool around with workers. Workers aren't pawns. Instead of this chaos, workers need robust industrial policy paired with workforce development and targeted tariffs to reshore certain American industries. Yet the president doesn't have a comprehensive plan to do any of that. Trump shouldn't fool around with our democratic values. Trump's trade agenda is all being done behind closed doors. There's no transparency.
Yeah, that's right.
Backroom deals are corrupt and they're anti-democratic. As members of Congress, we need to reassert our voice in the face of Trump's insane trade policies. Republicans need to stand with Democrats and decisively call out Trump's harmful tariff scheme. As I said in our previous hearing, House Democrats are open to new trade agreements with partners that are committed to advancing workers' rights, protecting the environment, defending human rights, and safeguarding our intellectual property. Unfortunately, the president's corrupt tariff scheme is trampling on our Constitution by sidelining Congress's jurisdiction over trade. Let this administration's record in trade policy and elsewhere serve as a grave warning, and there is no denying that this president and his cronies
When did everyone
are
start
rapidly
overusing the
working
word
to consolidate
robust?
power. With
January
that,
20th.
Trade Representative Greer, I have a couple of questions for you. In the April 2nd announcement, did the president issue tariffs on the European Union, Japan, and South Korea? Yes.
Yes, every country.
Okay, I don't need an explanation. I just need a yes or no answer. Did the president issue any new tariffs on Russia, Cuba, North Korea, or Belarus?
Come on!
We already have sanctions embargo, so no.
No, the question was yes or no. I recently read news reports indicating that you are the new head of the Office of Special Counsel. Is that correct?
I'm the acting head, that's correct.
And you currently serve as USTR. With the trade wars, don't you think that your time should be focused exclusively on trade? And isn't it a gross conflict of interest to be the body that oversees your own agency and position?
Oh, I certainly would recuse myself if there was an issue
Well,
involving
well,
me.
I
and my-
think
Well,
it's
isn't there always an
ridiculous that you
issue?
hold both, and I urge you to resign as special counsel. It makes no sense for you
true.
to have oversight.
He doesn't
over
have an
yourself.
extra
That's not
lawyer
true
that could be
oversight.
that?
And with that, I yield back.
Member's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Smucker for 5 minutes.
Smucker.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Ambassador. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
need to come up
for
with
the
some new
change
stuff.
that
Oh,
you're
here, wait.
working to bring about. And I also
I
want
know.
to point out
The wig's getting old all of a
differences
sudden.
that we've seen in the past 4 years of the Biden administration compared to the 4 years of the Trump administration, specifically in regards to trade. I think Democrats and Republicans alike were very unhappy.
That's what I was
with,
trying to think of, Neil.
The past
Thank you.
administration's approach to trade, basically, which was to do nothing.
I don't think there
to do nothing,
is.
to try to generate new
Well, maybe there
agreements
is on
and
a
to
small
do nothing,
basis.
to try to open markets up,
Like individuals
for
or something.
American
I don't know how that
manufacturers,
would
to
work.
do nothing,
How would
to
that
try
work?
to bring jobs back.
He's got the
to
mods.
America, and that's just in such stark contrast to what we saw during the previous Trump administration. He had a bold,
Yeah, and they're using the
effective
trade
approach
deficit to buy our
trade,
trade. Okay, something
one that
really
delivered
you like that? Well,
prosperity
it's
and
not a
brought our
cartoon,
trading
but
partners to the table. So we appreciate the
Those are
work that the
balls.
president did during his
Those are
previous
hairy
administration.
balls.
We appreciate.
But
the
I'm
work,
glad you can think of it as just a
that,
hairy butt.
he's doing and that you're doing on trade. It's a refreshing change.
Let me
to what
size
we've
it
seen over the-
appropriately.
over the past 4 years. And we trust the president to get this right again. We believe that we're seeing already the impact when you have
All the swag
tens,
Dennis
I don't know
Rodman
how many
can
we're up
carry
to now,
in.
but countries coming to the table that have for a long time had tariffs in place for our goods, but we weren't doing the
sorry.
same. And so the idea of reciprocal trade, I think, is a great one that I can tell you the American people in my district,
Oh, I know. Wait, hold
business
on.
owners in my district very much support, and they support the
Where's
goals
the balls? Oh, there they are.
of this administration
Okay, hold
to
on, hold
bring
on.
back manufacturing jobs to the country, to bring back that investment in the country, and then to open up markets.
Oh, wait, I gotta get the
to,
shoulders lined
to
up.
our great
Hold on.
American businesses.
I have
So
to make his head a little
I
smaller.
will.
Oh man,
I will
Nelly,
also
this is
say
a
this,
terrible picture.
Many of those business owners who love what the president is trying to accomplish are feeling a little consternation.
There we go.
They're concerned about what this, how we're going to achieve what the intent is here. They still believe in what the president is doing, as I think every at least Republican member here agrees with that. But I just want to give you an opportunity, if you don't mind, to just sort of expand maybe on some of the things that you've said previously, but with that sort of
Maybe she
audience
should
in
sit
mind,
next
what
to
would
him.
You say to,
Yes, I
for
think you're
instance, a
right.
copper manufacturer in my district, who
think
you and I
you're
have
correct.
spoken about previously, but this is impacting their business in a big way.
Yes, Mr. Smucker,
And,
I agree.
what would you say to other
Oh wait,
businesses
I have
who
a
are
special
in
guest
similar
with us
situation?
today.
Maybe
I have a new co-host.
If you could just paint a picture
Let me
of what
introduce you to my
success
new
will look
co-host.
like
Hold
here.
on.
Again, in the
Hold on.
context of the successes that we've seen with USMCA,
Here we go. Here's my new
negotiated under
co-host.
previous
Wait, hold on.
administration, all that, but
He's coming
take
right
us
now.
out a few
He's coming
months,
right-
take us out a
Here we
few
go.
years.
There we go.
What is
Hi!
what
Oh
is the
my
end goal
God!
here?
Hi! It's so good to see you.
I think I know what that is, but I'd love to
Hello,
give you a chance
how you
just
doing
to,
today? Well, I'm doing just
expand on that. What will
fine.
success look like? How
Is
will
that
help?
how are
every
you?
American
It's so nice to welcome to the show.
Thank you, Congressman.
Oh, thank you very much, Lolo. I really appreciate you inviting me to be on your show.
Overseas.
Well, I'm glad I bought you before the tariffs kicked in. Yeah, am I right?
Access foreign markets, or we face barriers overseas.
So everybody
and
meet
not
my
just
new
tariffs, but also
co-host.
all
He'll
the
be
non-tariff
joining us from time to time. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to meet you. I'm Democracy Dino's
At the
brother.
same time, we have foreign producers who receive subsidies. They have countries where economic policies depress domestic demand and make more stuff than they can consume, they send it here. And so I think what we're going to
It's the
see
easiest
in the near
voice for
term,
me
we're
to
going to
do.
see a handful of partners open their markets more to us, and it makes it
Oh boy.
much easier and much more competitive
see, who
economically
can be
to
over
have
here?
manufacturing here, to grow products here, to process them here, and export them to the rest of the world. So it's a virtuous cycle that you create when you create a situation where you have
know what
open
that is.
markets, you create broader economic policies, whether it's good tax policy, good energy policy, to give you the tailwind you need. We have to reshore manufacturing. This is an important way to do it. We can have tariff protection as we get rid of the trade deficit, reshore manufacturing, and as other countries open their markets, they can potentially have a different arrangement that helps us as we try to have reciprocal trade and get rid of the deficit and get back to being a producing economy.
Well, thank you again for your work. I'm out of time, but appreciate your work and we're with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now recognize Ms. Sewell for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Ambassador. It was a pleasure working with you on USMCA, and for what it's worth, I still believe that
Nellie is good for
USMCA
Greer.
is a gold standard for our trade agreements.
We'll try
that we
and line
make.
them up in the
It
next
was
shot.
done so with Congress and the executive,
Greer's
and that
spreading
should
it
be the
thick
standard.
for Smucker.
Unfortunately for both of us, President Trump has decided that he doesn't want to work with Congress and that he is not
Oh, I love
bound
this
by our
woman.
Constitution or trade laws. President Trump has unilaterally imposed the largest tax increase on working families in decades by implementing broad tariffs that are crashing the economy and threatening the livelihoods of so many working families in Alabama
Gorgeous
and all across
suit.
America. Moreover, he is doing so by abusing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEMPA, clearly states that the president can only use this authority in response to, quote, unusual and
I
extraordinary,
know,
end
GP.
quote,
It's
threats.
ridiculous.
However, both you and the president have described the trade deficit as persistent. I don't know how you can claim that our trade deficit is persistent and at the same time use an emergency authority which requires it to be, quote unquote, unusual. My question to you, I have a series of
Excellent
questions, and really I
question.
just want a yes or no answer. As our trade representative, do you believe there are any restriction on President Trump's emergency authority, or do you believe that President Trump has unlimited power to tariff any country for any reason? Yes or no?
Congress has put a number of limitations on that authority.
So is that a no?
It is not unlimited. It's not unlimited.
Does President Trump, did
I just can't
President
say
Trump
no.
ask you, or do you believe that using the emergency authority for this purpose of trade deficit is legal?
Of course it's legal, yes.
Do you believe Congress has any role in providing oversight of this administration's implementation of tariffs?
Certainly, that's why I'm here today.
Many of us on this committee have serious concerns that foreign nations will be pressured into negotiating as a result of this. And those negotiations could also extend to them purchasing the Bitcoin with the president's name and face on it. That would be illegal, right?
I have never looked into Bitcoin purchases by foreign countries.
Reclaiming my time. With this, are tariffs regressive or are they progressive tax?
Well, tariffs can protect, and that's why the United Auto Workers want them in place and have cheered the
I'm
tariffs.
reclaiming my
Stop
time.
it.
Who spends a higher portion of their income on goods, the wealthy or working class?
I think the more wealthy have a higher percentage of consumption overall in the United States.
Well, according to the Tax Foundation, a conservative entity, how things are distributed are more regressive and put a higher burden on lower income households more than higher income households.
The top 10% of incomes account for about 50% of consumption.
They do. And so I think for what I'm getting at, Mr. Ambassador, is that my Alabama constituents are very, very
That actually
worried.
means
I was home
50%
this
goes, it's
weekend, and Ms.
disproportionate,
Jackie,
yeah.
who owns Reflections, a coffee shop in Selma, Alabama, right near the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a place that she couldn't have, when she was growing up in Selma, go into, she now owns. It's a coffee shop, and she's really, really worried that the price of coffee will go up so high that she will not be able to keep her store. And she just, this is year number 3. It's a very popular store. But in Little Selma, Alabama, where the price of coffee is already $5, $4.99, increasing it even more would shut her down. And so my constituents have lots of questions to me and to, and to this president with respect to why we are choosing to go down this path. His tariffs amount to the largest tax increase on those families. It's bad for Alabama farmers who are facing retaliatory tariffs. It's bad for consumers who will see prices skyrocket. It is horrible for those who are retired and depend upon their retirement to live, and seeing the stock market go out of control. So, sir, this is really dire for a lot of folks that I represent. Dire for a lot of folks that I represent. And we can't wait for things to get better. And so I really urge you and the president to think about the least of these, the most vulnerable in our society, and how they're going to weather the storm. And to my Republican colleagues here on this committee, I hope that you will push back on these escalating, sweeping tariffs that have done so much damage to our economy. Thank you, and I yield back.
Members' time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Hearn for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Ambassador. I really appreciate you being here to recognize the relationship between the executive branch and Congress as it relates to trade, so thank you. Over the last 4 years, trade has been neglected at best, and it's the long past time for a real trade agenda and a president who wants to strengthen America, not cede its interests to foreign governments. As a matter of fact, the American people elected President Trump in November under the premise that he would rebalance trade with our allies and others around the world to bring manufacturing back to the United States, to create high-paying jobs in America, make things in America. And as you just alluded to, it's been applauded by many people, including our great auto workers, as they talk about reconstituting those manufacturing jobs where they're needed most. You mentioned in your testimony that Israel is one of the countries looking to negotiate, and to my knowledge, they were the first to remove all tariffs for the United States. It is heartening to hear that our allies are coming to the table and taking quick action to remove trade barriers with the United States. Last Congress, I introduced a resolution in support of the free trade agreement we have with Israel as a way to support one of our greatest allies as they face an existential threat from Iran and its terror proxies. I appreciate President Trump's strong support of Israel, and I hope that this first step by Israel to move to a zero tariff policy will lead the way to an even stronger trade and economic relationship between our two countries. Trade policy should reflect not only economic interests, but also national security and ideological alignment. Strengthening relationships with allies who share American values is essential to reducing reliance on adversarial nations. Mr. Ambassador, how can we ensure our trade policies prioritize strategic allies like Israel and Taiwan who share American values and are willing to join us in enacting common policies to counter our adversaries?
Thank you, Congressman. I'm happy to report that Sunday night I had a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu about this very issue. And the Taiwanese have also reached out. So this is something where we're having close, high-level talks about how to move forward. I would also say, as we talk to our allies, we're encouraging them and hoping that they will align with us on things like export controls and investment screening to make sure that as we trade with them, we're trading in a way that increases our economic security and not just our economic growth.
We know calculations are going on and into the reciprocal tariffs, include more than just tariffs other countries place on the United States. And as you're undergoing negotiation with our allies, is the President and your office taking into consideration things like export controls, as you just mentioned, foreign military sales, foreign direct investment as it relates to their relationship with the United States?
So we certainly consider those things and appreciate them. Remember, with foreign direct investment, because they export so much to us, they have all these hard dollars, and the best place to put them is here. And so that's kind of a natural outgrowth. We are very focused on making sure that we have a trading goods that is fair and make sure that we're not getting dumped on or have overcapacity overflowing into the U.S. and that we have export market opportunities. But we certainly are encouraged by and the $4 trillion in new investment that's been announced by foreign companies.
Are military sales included in that?
So that's a good question. We've thought about that. When you look at the trade numbers, I think foreign military sales, official ones, don't normally show up in those trade numbers. But I know that's been raised by several of our allies, and of course we want our technology to be the technology that allies are using.
The last 4 years under former President Biden, USTR failed to adequately address discriminatory extraterritorial taxes and digital trade barriers harming American companies. Last year, I raised concerns with Ambassador Tai when USTR failed to include digital trade barriers in the 2024 National Trade Estimate, the NTE, report on foreign trade barriers. The internet and digital technologies have revolutionized commerce, enabling businesses of all sizes to access global markets and consumers like never before. However, this potential is being undermined by the rise of digital trade barriers imposed by some of our trading partners. Those barriers come in various forms, from data localization requirements to discriminatory regulations and censorship measures. That not only stifles innovation and economic growth, but also undermines the competitiveness of American business in the digital age. In 2023, the U.S. exports of digitally enabled services accounted for 64% of all U.S. exports, and the U.S. had nearly $300 billion in digital trade surplus. Will you make it a priority to, unlike the last administration, to address this digital trade barrier?
Yes, we're focused on this. We're not political or choosing sectors we like or don't like, and we've recorded in the trade estimate this year different digital trade barriers. Obviously, Congress is going to, regulate and decide how we're going to, manage digital trade, competition, those kinds of things. But we just can't have discrimination, and I won't accept that by our foreign trading partners, especially in this area where we're so competitive.
I want to thank you again for coming here, and appreciate you answering everyone's question. Again, it shows the understanding of the relationship between the executive branch and Congress as it relates to trade. Thank you again. Appreciate it. I yield back.
Ms. Del Bene.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for being with us today. Tax day came early this year. It came on April 2nd, since Trump's sweeping tariffs are raising prices for American families by $4,600 this year, according to the latest estimates. It keeps going up. Families are struggling. Businesses are panicking. I talked to a business in my district that talked about being tariffed out of business. We have businesses who have a lot of export, who manufacture right here in the U.S. and export, who are losing business. Even Republicans are beginning to break with the president. We've seen several joint bills that would make clear that the president does not have the ability to single-handedly impose sweeping tariffs. The real question we're all wondering is, how do we get out of this
GP.
mess
We know
that Trump
this.
has created?
We do know this.
Chairman Smith recently said he
I know
hopes
it seems
that
like
Trump
Americans
tariffs
may
will
not
give
know that, but we
USTR
do know
leverage to
this.
negotiate new trade deals. But Ambassador,
we are
how
captured.
can any
We are a
country
captured
trust
nation
the
right
US
now.
enough to make a trade deal? Given that Trump has thrown out existing trade deals like Australia or South Korea, or even USMCA, which he negotiated and Congress enacted, how are people going to trust us when arbitrarily these deals are being thrown out?
Congresswoman, thank you. The United States remains the consumer market of choice for everybody. And I hear some of these Wall Street analysts, predicting, imminent catastrophe. And that's just, when we look back at Trump 1, we put tariffs on China and we reinvigorated NAFTA to be USMCA, we saw real household medium income go up. We saw inflation go down, unemployment go down.
I'm going to check that.
And the countries are coming to us every day. We're having several meetings with them every day to do these deals. So they're not showing hesitance. It's quite the opposite.
But if we have a deal that's being blown up, then you can say you're negotiating a deal. 2 seconds later, you can throw it out. What kind of deal is that? Are these deals that you're supposedly negotiating, are they going to come to Congress for a vote like USMCA did?
These are deals, so first of all, if we did a comprehensive free trade agreement, of course we would come to Congress, et cetera, and we will certainly keep Congress up to speed on any kind of
Any deal that you do, are you going to bring that to Congress for a vote?
We'll do what the law requires. Some of it's consultation, some requires a vote, so we'll follow the law on that front. But the countries are coming, right? If they were hesitant, they wouldn't be knocking down our
But
door.
I don't understand what the countries are coming to do. You put tariffs in place, sweeping tariffs with no specifics in terms of what the goals are, no plans, and then you say countries are coming to what? To individually negotiate with President Trump, and it's his whim what's acceptable or not acceptable?
So for example, I get a letter from the Vietnamese, which I received recently, and it outlined a number of tariff lines where they want to reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers that they want to remove. and they want to engage with us on reciprocal trade.
But what are the objectives of the negotiation? You didn't lay those out. The plan, there's no plan that was laid out by the president. I've seen no plan from USTR on what the goal of the tariffs are. We're damaging companies. We've thrown out existing trade deals that we already have, and now you say there's a negotiation with no clear goal what that negotiation is, or whether or not Congress is going to have a vote on a potential deal?
So we have a 20-page order laying out the basis for the order and the emergency we're facing, which is the trade deficit that President Biden left us with, the offshoring that it represents, the non-tariff barriers that it represents, and we're looking to eliminate that. And a tariff is a way to do that. And if a country has an alternative method that they think will help us meet those goals, we're happy to entertain
Can we talk about the emergency powers of the emergency power statute that Trump invoked, IEPA, to impose his tariff? It states the president in every possible instance shall consult with Congress before exercising any powers. That didn't happen.
Our staff came, our USTR staff came up to Congress and did consult. I've had
with who? With what members? With what
meetings.
Members of Congress did you consult with? I'm a member of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm a member of the Trade Subcommittee.
I called both the chairman and the ranking member the day before, the morning of.
So
My
if you
staff
talked
came
to,
up and briefed.
if you called
my
to,
jurisdiction.
how could you consult with folks when there wasn't even a deal that was proposed? In fact, it wasn't till April 2nd when the tariffs were put in place. No one even knew what exactly was going to happen. There was nothing to consult on. So how did that consultation take place?
I had a phone call with Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Neal.
About a non-existent deal?
Well, I told them about the IEPA action that was coming, and I sent my staff up here to brief the committee staff as well.
So I argue now we did not have that consultation. Here we are. There was no plan in place. There's no plan in place going forward. The American people are hurting, and now in the rule vote that we're going to have just after we are done with this hearing, Republicans are already putting in a provision to make sure that they don't have to vote on the tariffs that are in place. Congress should have a role here. It's terrible that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle aren't willing to have a vote too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for being here. It's my opinion that part of the reason President Trump has taken such drastic action on trade is due to the fact that there was no trade agenda under the Biden administration. And I didn't hear any sniping from the other side about that. The past administration's failure to engage in meaningful conversations with our trade partners opened the door for countries to run afoul of the World Trade Organization tariff agreements and to impose excessive non-tariff barriers. These countries have had no incentive to negotiate, and they've been massively benefiting from the system as it is. For example, in my state, the hardwood companies have been pummeled by China, dumping their hardwood in the American market. China gained at our expense while we were asleep at the wheel. Thankfully, that is not the policy of the United States today. Due to President Trump's swift action, more than 70 countries are knocking down our door, ready to negotiate a trade deal. Today, I want to focus on the future of our trade agenda. Looking to the very near future, the administration is required by statute to undertake the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement review process in 2026. I can't understate the importance of the USMCA to my constituents. The growth in the manufacturing sector, spurred on by our cooperation with Canada and Mexico, has helped sustain thousands of jobs in my district. I'm well aware that this agreement is not perfect, and we are fortunate to have the review process in place in order to make the necessary improvements. Ambassador Greer, what commitments can you make to us today in regard to the USMCA review?
Wait, did you shout? I'll be in my bunk.
Opportunity to advance President Trump's goals of promoting domestic manufacturing, and how will you engage with Congress to facilitate this process?
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I'll just note that goods coming from Canada and Mexico right now that comply with the rules of the agreement continue to enter duty-free. This is an important agreement. I met with my Mexican counterpart last night. I have worked in the works. I have a meeting with my Canadian
Really? Last
counterparts.
night? How was it?
And we expect that we will initiate the public consultation
How'd it
process that's required by
go?
the statute at some point at the time
Oh,
required.
I can't find the
I
McDonald's
think
guy now.
with the USMCA, it's important that Canada and Mexico not be used as an export platform for third countries. That's not
Oh,
what
I
we
know what to
want.
do. Hold on.
USMCA should be an agreement that promotes manufacturing
Let
in
me get rid of
America,
McDonald's
and
here.
that we can rely on our partners to the north
Oh,
and
there we
south if needed. But
Okay.
it can't be a
I got it.
situation
Hold on, guys.
where countries can just come in, China or Vietnam or somebody, build a factory in Mexico, assemble it with parts from there, and send it across, and get the benefit of an agreement where they've taken no obligations. So I want to make sure that it truly is an agreement that helps America first.
Thank you. I've greatly appreciated your leadership in protecting
Oh,
American
yeah, your
digital companies
leadership is
abroad.
real good.
You and I are in agreement about the dangers
Where
of
is-
South Korea's anti-competitive policies towards American digital companies. I intend to reintroduce legislation that seeks to ensure that American companies are not being harmed.
Oh, so you're
or
not
one of our
doing new work?
closest
You're just going to
allies,
recycle your
while
old
Chinese
shit that
companies
didn't
are
work the
left
first time?
unscathed.
Got
The
it.
digital trade sector is rapidly growing, and it's important that we do not lose market share
Digital
to China in this critical
digital
field.
trade.
Several countries are considering
It's
legislation
digital
that mimics the
trade.
European
Where's the damn
Union's
thing?
Digital Markets Act, which has undisputably caused a digital winter for American tech companies
Digital
operating in
winter,
Europe.
digital
What are
spring.
your plans to address these harmful policies and to
Digital
ensure the prosperity of
winter.
American digital trade? And do you think that digital
American
trade will
digital
play a part in the
trade.
imminent trade discussions regarding
Sorry.
the Liberation Day tariffs?
Thank you.
Liberation
first of all,
Day.
I understand that there's obviously a national
Oh,
conversation
here we
going
go.
on about how digital trade should be regulated, and there are lots of views on
And
that.
it's
What I will
back.
say is we're not going
Hi,
to outsource
Blobby.
that regulation. We're not going to let the European Union or Korea or any other jurisdiction.
I love
set the rules for
Blobby.
digital
Blobby's
trade. It
my
will be us,
favorite.
And they won't be able to do it in a way that's discriminatory either. That is
Yeah.
impermissible, especially when we have,
What?
as you noted, the Chinese competition out there. If we're going to have companies that operate in this
Yeah,
space and are
actually,
so
Max,
competitive in this space, we need
this
to make
morning
sure that they're
on the
American
whatever
companies,
I was watching,
right? That's what we
Bloomberg,
need to make sure. And
they
so
were
this is certainly
saying,
something that
I'd
we
buy
can talk
tech.
about in any negotiations that come up.
But one
Thank
guy
you.
said.
We have
anyway,
historically
I don't know.
forged some of our strongest alliances based on
He didn't say
procuring
what tech.
critical minerals, which are difficult or nearly impossible to obtain in the U.S. Will you
Oh my
commit
God,
to
that works for
exploring
you
trade
too.
discussions and partnerships with like-minded partners to protect and build up our critical minerals
I have an idea.
today?
Yes.
Hang with me.
I yield back.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to invoke a moment of a point of personal privilege. When the ambassador called me, it was more to inform me of what the administration was going to do. It wasn't to consult or to seek my opinion as to what they were going to do.
Smith is like,
Mr. Murphy.
What?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just
Yeah,
want
probably.
to show a slide to everybody documenting where we are with the United States and the U.S. trade deficit. I think this really shows why this is an emergency. If you look at where we are with manufacturing
What
goods,
year is
that's
that?
in the red column
1980
here.
what?
If you look at what has happened to the manufacturing capacity of the United States, we have plummeted, absolutely plummeted down. Here in 2022,
That is 1980.
we have such a trade
No, 1990.
deficit with manufactured goods.
1990 is where that
This is why
begins.
the president has said this is an emergency.
Yeah,
Same thing with
NVIDIA,
fuels
yeah,
and
it is
other
bouncing
total
around.
goods. We have plummeted.
That was early
in
this morning.
nation's
It's just one
capacity
dude.
to actually produce things. So yes, this is an emergency, and this is by all means altogether the right thing to do. If we
I would
do
say
not
this is
reverse
good.
this
This is
trend,
not jobs
again,
as
going
shared.
with the
Okay.
absolute calamitous effect of how we are hurtling towards a sovereign debt crisis, this nation does not exist. And yes, there is short-term problems, without a doubt. But it's the same thing by taking medicine you don't want
Already
to take.
debunked
If we
this lie.
don't
I
help
know,
the
it's so
body
dumb.
by intervening and doing what is
And
critically
this is like a
important for this
fucking,
nation,
what is that?
nothing
Almost a
else
40-year,
matters. So this
that's
is
a
why how manufacturing has
35-year
plummeted, and
trend.
this is why we are
Give
in
me
a
a
state
break.
of emergency. Thank
Where's
you.
the rise in services economy,
Thanks
bitch?
just for that moment.
Why don't you
I wanna
show both
briefly
charts?
say something before I begin my remarks.
I'm gonna slap
I've
a
gone
tariff
down in
on
many,
Carla's
many
butt.
times to Haiti. We talked about this before and done many, a lot of
I'm
mission
gonna slap
work,
a tariff on
down there.
Uranus.
Unfortunately, the Hope Help program is set to expire in September. I hope some work is being done in reauthorizing
Actually,
this
yeah, Bobo
program.
has a super
We're
old
trying
phone.
to nearshore,
But she
onshore.
likes
We
her
want
old
to
phone.
stabilize our Caribbean nations, our
right.
Central American nations.
I'm slapping
And Haiti
tariffs
has
on all
fallen
Uranuses.
into such decay right now. It makes Somalia look like Wonderland. We really need to help these nations stabilize in our hemisphere. It helps everybody. So I hope that is just going to be on your radar. HR 1625,
thanks,
the Health
Obama.
Extension Act. Just to shift gears again, I want to talk a little bit about de minimis.
Oh, yeah.
The legislation, HR 79, the End China's De Minimis Abuse Act, did not make it to the floor. However, we're seeing that packages being abused by this loophole, literally with China, overwhelm the CBP, leading to billions of dollars of lost revenue and jobs. This has allowed Chinese companies to send so many goods into this country without paying tariffs. Can you discuss why the administration is taking on de minimis, why this is so necessary?
Yes, it's essentially for all the reasons you just described. De minimis originated as a way for tourists or others to go overseas, buy souvenirs, come back, bring them in duty free, and that persists, right? That continues. I think everyone's comfortable with that. But what we saw were foreign.
I thought they were closing
companies
the de minimis
using
thing.
the system and taking advantage of it and building a commercial, a commercial case for it, their entire business on it, and that ended up undermining a lot of retailers here in the United States. And so it's important to make sure that that tool is used for its original purpose and not for other countries to avoid duty payments or things like that.
One of the comments were that we shouldn't be doing tariffs to our friends. Friends don't treat friends with horrible tariffs like we are being done by other countries. So I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. So we're able to see what the rest of the world has been doing to the United States. I don't think the American public understands this. And this is why I think it's just so critical that we shine the spotlight on this. Quickly, just with one thing that happened in the pandemic, I'm a physician, and we saw that our supply chain for pharmaceuticals, for health-related PPE, et cetera, is critically at risk during these things. If China were to shut off all its exports overnight, medical supply chains would be one of the industries hardest hit, and we would have American patients literally dying because they could not get medicines or other type of devices. Can you discuss how the Trump administration's trade is helping to secure our health supply chain?
Yes. So
I want to
first
hear
of all,
this.
We have to reshore pharmaceutical production.
How's that going to happen?
To avoid the very situation you talked about, and we have to do it now. We can't wait for the next crisis. We can't wait for the next conflict.
Well, but
we have to do it now.
what does that mean?
I understand the Commerce Department will be undertaking an investigation of the pharmaceutical supply chain to assess what tools we can use. The president's talked about tariffs that might apply to certain things to incentivize reshoring, but I assume that investigation will also have other ideas as well.
We have to make sure that in this tariff incident, we're not hurting American companies and hurting them over
How about
helping
patience?
out foreign countries. And,
buy
going back
domestic
to,
fentanyl.
Kamala's famous phrase of getting to the root causes of immigration, they did absolutely
Oh my
nothing
God.
to bring industry
Hey, dude,
nearshore,
she didn't
trying
win.
to prop up Caribbean
She didn't
nations
win.
so they won't have everybody
Don't
trying
worry.
to run over a border. Look,
You're
I've
safe.
talked to you about Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico
You're
this
safe to
last
be the
week, and there's
mediocre
so
white
much
man
of
you've
an
always
opportunity
been.
to go there and
Keep doing it.
onshore in an American territory to bring back American pharmaceutical industries, so many other industries that help us with our national security. And at the bottom line,
It's funny.
this
Why
is what
didn't
we're
your
talking about. We're
guy
talking about
use the
national
Defense
security.
Production
Thank
Act
you,
to save American
Mr.
lives?
Ambassador, I'll
Can
yield
you
back.
answer that, sir, Dr.
Chair.
Murphy?
Ambassador Greer, my constituents are sick with worry about the high cost that the Trump tariffs will bring them. They are barely able to afford their everyday living expenses, but now they're hearing that the average family will have to pay $4,600 a year more because of the Trump tariffs. They are hearing this will be the largest tax increase for the American people in our nation's peacetime history. They are hearing Goldman Sachs say that we face a recession. The increases will be for food items that the U.S. does not produce domestically, like cacao beans, coffee beans, tea and spices, and certain nuts. But non-food items like clothing, consumer electronics, shoes, cell phones, furniture, and household appliances will be especially hard hit, as more than 50% of our consumption comes from countries facing tariff increases of 30% or more. I must point out that there are some items on the list, like bananas and cacao beans, which the U.S. can never grow enough of to meet our own demand because of our mostly non-tropical climate. In fact, the U.S. produces a tiny number of bananas in Hawaii and Florida, but depends enormously on importing bananas from Guatemala, Ecuador, and Costa Rica, all of which receive tariffs. And in fact, the U.S. is the world's largest importer of bananas. So this shoot first, then aim approach is making Americans' lives much worse with no actual plan and doesn't make any sense. I see this in three ways. First, the president said that these tariffs would bring manufacturing business back to America, but thousands of Americans were immediately laid off, and manufacturers are telling you that this will crush them. And why would the president impose this tariff tax on tropical countries when America can by far not produce their own bananas, coffee, and chocolate? Is the president aware that these crops only grow in tropical climates? Second, in imposing these tariffs, the president claims that the U.S. is being ripped off by other countries that are profiting off of us. Yet these tariffs are being imposed on countries with whom the U.S. has trade surpluses, including the Netherlands, the UK, Belgium, Panama, and so on. Using the formula that USTR released
The
to
de
the public to
minimis has just
justify
been
this
replaced
chaos,
by tripling
no
the
country with whom
levies
the US
coming
has
in
a
on
trade
packages
surplus
under
should be
$800.
subject to additional
So
tariffs.
I gave you a
How can
link
you
to
and
a
the
Business
president
Insider
justify
article from
forcing
9
the
hours
American
ago.
people to pay more for
So
goods from these countries that already
Jameson is lying.
import more of our goods than we
Jameson
do
is
theirs?
lying.
Third,
Lying.
then if there's an actual formula, why would the Trump administration decide to reserve its most severe punishment not for Russia, which was entirely spared, but for some of the poorest, least developed countries in the world? For instance, Madagascar, which has a poverty rate of over 75% and where the average worker lives on less than $2.15 per day. The president placed a 47% tariff. So Madagascar, 47% tariff, Russia, 0. My conclusion is that there's only one explanation for this: corruption. The Trump administration is now bragging that dozens of countries are approaching the White House ready to offer concessions and negotiate a reduction in Trump tariffs. This presents a completely unprecedented opportunity for corruption. If his tariffs are allowed by Congress and the courts to stand, then the president could unilaterally decide to remove or reduce tariffs on certain countries. With no transparency, a country could pay the president or his family money through memberships at Mar-a-Lago or payments through their various cryptocurrencies
Exactly,
in
Lee.
exchange
Published
for a
late last
reduction
night.
in
I
tariffs.
remember hearing it. I was listening to
His cronies
Bloomberg
could pay him directly
late.
to remove tariffs from certain imports. So, Ambassador Greer, I would like to ask you two yes or no questions. My first question: you're putting tariffs on crops that we, for the most part, don't grow, like bananas, cocoa beans, coffee, and vanilla. Is the president aware that these crops only grow in tropical climates? My
Yes, he's aware.
second question, yeah, you answered yes. Can you promise that there won't be a pay-for-play system where companies and donors make the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago to get exemptions?
You have my promise.
Well, my constituents don't have that access, nor do most of the American people, but because of these Trump tariffs, it is they who will have to pay the exorbitant costs of these actions, and that's not right.
Mr. Kustoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening today's hearing, and thank you, Ambassador Greer, for appearing today. Ambassador Greer, I represent part of Memphis, Tennessee, and most of rural West Tennessee. And in Memphis, Tennessee, last year, 2024, we had a great opportunity with Elon Musk when he made an announcement to create a historic investment in Memphis through his company XAI. And the investment will lead to the world's largest supercomputer called Colossus. So Colossus is the core infrastructure behind Grok, which is the artificial intelligence system that Mr. Musk is developing or has developed and that I use and probably a lot of other people use. I've toured Colossus, and frankly, the capabilities are absolutely remarkable. From what I understand with this project and with Elon Musk is he places a strong emphasis on sourcing American-made products with XAI whenever feasible, demonstrating a commitment to domestic innovation. The issue is that supercomputers like Colossus depend on a variety of advanced components that right now are not produced in the United States. And I think we can all agree that we want the United States to be the absolute leader when it comes to AI. The other issue is the reliance presents obvious and serious strategic vulnerabilities because a disruption in the supply chain
He sure is, GP.
could hinder U.S. capabilities. So I understand that the entire industry is working on building domestic capacity. And thanks to President Trump and his efforts and the efforts of the administration, we've seen massive investments from companies like NVIDIA and Taiwan Semiconductors. But I think we all also realize that that transition is going to be several years, or it's going to take several years. So could you talk about how USTR is balancing the near-term need for components with the long-term goal of onshoring these critical supply chains?
Certainly. So when the president took his action on reciprocal trade, there were some items that were not covered by the new tariff because further investigation was needed.
Maybe we
This
should learn how to
includes
roast our own
pharmaceuticals, as I've
coffee
discussed, but
and
also
just
includes
get Kona and then
semiconductors.
make it different.
So many semiconductors are not covered
It's
by the
not strong
reciprocal
enough for
tariff
me. I'm
because
going to
the
be
Commerce
honest.
Department, as
I don't
understand
prefer
is
it.
looking into
I know
doing
some
a
people
further
do.
investigation
Are we talking about
to see,
coffee?
where tariffs may or may not be appropriate on semiconductor chips or the downstream components, and that's something I know that the Commerce Department's
Are you talking about mushroom water?
Thank you, Ambassador. If I can, because there's been a lot of talk here, some talk about Russia and the suggestions that the Trump administration has let Russia off the hook when it comes to tariffs. My recollection is that this committee, several years ago, took the lead on bipartisan legislation to change the trade treatment as it relates to Russia, specifically revoking the permanent normal trade relations, specifically banning the import of all energy products from Russia, specifically by providing a path to raise tariffs on many other products from Russia. So in fairness, I know
we
that
can't
both
get
the
those
Biden
big tumblers
administration
now
and the Trump
because
administration
Amazon is too
have added to this
expensive.
legislation
Dang it.
by imposing a wide range of sanctions on Russia, which cut off most of trade and investment. So my question to you is, would any Russian exporter feel that it has better access to the United States market than our non-sanctioned trading partners
Explorers?
who may face higher tariffs right now?
Oh, no, by no means. Russia is subject to a very high tariff due to the good work you did here in Congress, as well as other kind of bad actors that fall into that category.
Bipartisan.
On a bipartisan basis, that's right.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for visiting with us. I'll have to say that I have really appreciated the discussion that we've had here today with our colleagues, and as is always the case with me, I have remarks that are planned, and then I make the mistake of listening to what other people have said. And I really do want to agree with some of the things that my colleagues have said, like Mr. Schmucker and Mr. Kelly, that we need, and you, Mr. Ambassador, have said that we need to have access to markets. Specifically, Mr. Kelly said, we can't afford to lose any market share, and I agree with him. He went on to say that we need to level the playing field. Mr. LaHood talked about his soybean farmers in Illinois, and I'm from Wisconsin, sir. And so I do know that we have $1.3 billion worth of soybean product, and our main partner is with China. And so I think Wisconsin farmers, that's just one example of how we are at risk of losing market share. And then Mr. Doggett went on to say how, you know, instead of allowing, like my soybean farmers to do that, what we would revert to would be to give them welfare. And I guess I don't agree with that characterization. I don't even agree with it as a characterization of a subsidy, because it's actually a ripoff. You know, farmers lost about $27 billion in the first Trump administration, and they only got about $23 billion in subsidy return. So they lost money, they lost market share, and they lost lives. You know, in Wisconsin, there was a study done, and they looked at suicide rates, and suicide rates among farmers are like 3.5 times more than in other professions. It's a very stressful career. And so I am very concerned, and I wonder what's going to happen to them.
I have it pulled up, Badger. I don't see him at the podium
said to
yet.
us, I think you sort of skirted the question about whether or not we were going to give them subsidies. But even if we would give them subsidies, that would not prevent them from losing market share. And farmers they don't want a check. They want to be able to farm. I also wonder, sir, what, you know, I'm just saying, I think that when you look at trade deficits, I think we have to look at more than just what a tariff may or may not do. Our trade imbalances over time have been caused by us not having a trade balance on issue of labor laws, making sure that there's no slave labor and child labor, that the environment is protected when we extract materials and do stuff, that people have the ability to bargain in their countries and to make sure that they get a wage that's commensurate with their efforts. And, you know, I agree with Mr. Kelly that we need to level the playing field on those fields, and that a rising tide will lift all boats. I do wonder, Mr. Ambassador, whether this administration's trade policy, and it seems that it does, my colleague here just mentioned the trade deficit that we have with Madagascar. I had the privilege to go on a trip with the committee to Madagascar where there was a 75% poverty rate. So I'm wondering if they will ever be able to give us a trade balance. Speaking of Madagascar, they belong to AGOA. And I'm wondering if this administration's policies would eliminate something that's been bipartisan, the trade preference programs that we've had under AGOA. Yes or no? Are we going to have an AGOA?
So, Congresswoman,
yeah,
thanks for your
AGOA.
remarks. Well, it's up to Congress. Congress has to decide if they're going
up to the president. He's in charge of trade. We've sort of.
Do you have a bill? I haven't seen the bill yet on this. If there's a bill, I'll advise the president accordingly on how we should approach it.
Okay, I'll just say one last question to you. You say that we have got to reshore manufacturing. You did not say where folks will get the money and the confidence, really, to make these investments. Is any of the money that you plan to get from tariffs going to be targeted to incentivizing manufacturing? I've got a factory that made car frames, A.O. Smith. 10,000 people working there. When are we going to reopen A.O. Smith, sir? If the chairman.
I would love to reopen that. And
when? Will I be alive? I'm going to be 74 in 9 days.
I hope so. We should go there, you and I, and talk to them about what they need in order to reopen. We put tariffs in place.
I mean,
on
they've been
foreign autos and
shuttered
auto parts
for years.
We want to create incentives so they can reopen.
What's the timeline between the suffering that they're doing now and when A.O. Smith is going to open again?
Part of the problem is we've offshored jobs for so long, and no one's taken action. We've sat on it. We have this huge. It is an emergency, and I agree with you. And I think your comments have been very thoughtful.
I don't have that much time. I mean, I'll be 74 in a few days. It's 10 years. It takes a long time to open up a factory.
That's
and to get the investments.
That's why the
And
president.
is it going to be 10 years? How long before we just have to be patient?
That's why the president's acting now, because we can't wait anymore. We have to reshore now.
Now, like a microwave now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I yield back.
Thank you. I'll recognize myself for questions. Ambassador, thank you for calling and consulting with me before a lot of these trade agreements. So I appreciate the correspondence there because you have.
Excuse me, you fucking little liar.
I also want to just raise the significance that I believe AGOA has for this country. And those trade preferences with those African nations from a security perspective is
not like
extremely
USAID
important,
that you
and
just
I hope
shit
that
on.
the administration continues to see from a security perspective that trade preferences with those African countries is extremely important.
Well, Chairman, I will certainly share your views with the president, and I've shared them before with others in the White House. And I understand the importance of AGOA to this committee and Congress, and I would encourage the committee as you look at it and potential renewal to think about ways to improve it.
Improve it.
And I would
Oh,
love
is that
to
what
work
we're going
with
to
you
do?
all, to make sure that we can do that. It's just very important. I also I've heard a lot of conversations today, and
I think I might be going away from this for a minute.
one thing that I appreciate is Secretary Bessent's comments that I've read, that he says over the last 4 decades, Wall Street got very wealthy.
Okay.
But over
Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to listen to this douche whistle lie about shit. Fuck that. There is, we're waiting for comments from Pete Pig's Breath. So I'm kind of stalling while I see if he's going to show up to whatever he's supposed to show up to or not. I don't know. I did listen to parts of Trump's rambling, sweaty speech last night at the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Caucus or something. I don't know what they are. Whatever they are. Anyway, yeah, he was out of fucking control. Yeah, that factory can reopen, but how long will it take to get business? Auto OEMs will already have long-term contracts for frames. Have to be in at the beginning of the model to get business. This just is not working. It isn't going to work. And that's really the bottom line. Let me see if Mark Carney hasn't shown up yet. But I do have one thing that I wanted to. Oh shit! Where did I put it? Where did I put that? Hold on. Oh man. Too many dicks on the dance floor. Too many dicks. Too many dicks on the dance floor. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh. Oop. Too many dicks on the dance floor. Too many dicks. Where am I? Where is it? Oh, wait, this might be it. Okay, yeah, this is it. Ay. Okay. Where was it? Oh, I guess I didn't save that there. Okay, that's fine. No problem. You stepped out of a dream. Da 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 da. All right. Not who you want to hear, but who you're gonna hear. It's not what you want to hear, but it's what you're gonna hear. Mornings with Maria. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll just start playing it.
Welcome back. Breaking this morning, China says it will impose an 84% tariff on U.S. goods. Another retaliation move in response to President Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Those tariffs took effect last night at midnight, including the 104% tariff on China. Joining me now is U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Morning, Maria.
Well, I want to start right there. Give us your reaction to more escalation coming out of China, taking their tariffs up to 84% on top of President Trump's retaliatory tariffs.
Well, Maria, I think it's unfortunate that the Chinese actually don't want to come and negotiate because they are the worst offenders in the international trading system. They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world. And I can tell you that this escalation is a loser for them. That they have some very smart, the economists,
Scott,
the
backbends. You're very tall.
Technocrats within their bureaucracy, and they would be telling the leadership that we do not have the edge here. They are the surplus country. That their
his dick is this big.
To the U.S. are 5 times.
I mean, you have to make a dick joke when he's holding his hands like that.
They can raise their tariffs, but so
Oh
what?
wait, yeah, I can do my Scott Besson impression.
Let's talk about this for a second, because I wonder. I agree with you. I mean, I think that China needs the United States so much more than the U.S. needs China. But the economies are so connected, Secretary. We're buying all this cheap stuff. People expect things to be cheap, and we know it's because they're made in China. And it feels like a soft war right now with China. Are there any areas or opportunities to give companies the time to move those supply chains to America so that we don't have to rely so much on China? This can't happen overnight, right? Even though China is the enemy, the #1 adversary, and we are in this soft war and they're escalating this right now, are the near-term effects such that the U.S. gets impacted negatively first?
Well, again, Maria, no one wins in a war, but it's proportionality, and the proportionality for the Chinese is going to be much worse. And the other thing, too, Maria, what would be a very good step with the Chinese would be acknowledging that the precursor chemicals for fentanyl come from China.
Yes, fentanyl.
They make their way into North America and then are sold into the U.S. We have more than 100,000 American citizens dying every year. And
really?
so China, a very good start.
I thought everything was fine.
The
borders closed.
A gesture on the precursor fentanyls, because distributing drugs in China is punishable by death. Why don't they apply the same standards to the people who are exporting these chemicals to the U.S.?
Yeah. Well, it's true, and that's where this all started. President Trump said that he was putting tariffs in place on China as a result of their failure to stop the fentanyl flow.
Yeah, is that what it was?
But now people are wondering, is that still the reason to put tariffs on China? Is it to raise revenue?
I've had my jaw wired
shut. To get supply chains into America? Is it to answer, the fentanyl problem?
Yeah, what's the problem
business
now?
Leaders are saying to me,
there a moving
why are we doing this?
goalpost, Maria?
Everyone was very excited about President Trump's agenda, deregulation, tapping into energy, tax cuts, and now, boom, with these tariffs, everything has changed. Why are we doing this?
Well, Maria, I think it's, as you said in the last segment, it's all of the above. President Trump was elected with a mandate.
No.
He's closed the border. So
less votes than he got last time or something.
We are doing
for the first time. I don't know.
Very large deportation of people, criminals, and people who have overstayed.
Secretary Besson, are you schmedium?
Their visits, their period. So we're in the midst of that.
We can't,
and
Neil. There's
now
tariffs.
President Trump is tackling the trade agenda, and
not even a majority.
This isn't done in isolation, Maria. As you just interviewed Senator Haggerty, we're running the parallel processes here. So there's tariff, there's tax.
Yeah.
Taxes going extremely well.
Look at the Dow Jones.
Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, from the leadership of people like Senator Haggerty, Jason
I don't think
Smith,
they expected
Senator
the market
Crapo,
to react so
I can tell you
fast.
that's going very well.
I don't think they did. I don't think they thought it was going to happen this
point,
fast.
In the not too distant future, I think we will be back to firing
I
on all
I
cylinders.
think they think
we have the response to the
I
countries
really
who
think
want to come and sit at the table rather than escalate has been overwhelming.
He's very mad
Our-
about
our-
people
our
retaliating
allies,
against
Japan,
us.
South Korea, India, and I will note that they are all around China. We have Vietnam coming today.
Yeah.
So
Vietnam
everyone is
again?
coming
How
to
many
the
times
table,
can they
and
come?
basically China's surrounded. The other thing
That's a very good point.
the other thing that I would
Down.
note is that A Spanish official said today that maybe
where's that I
Europe
did
should
that
look
sticker?
to China
Yeah.
instead of the U.S. And I can tell you that is a losing proposition for the Europeans, because what is going to happen, and we've already seen it starting last week, that as we put up the tariff wall, China's business model is predicated on this incredibly imbalanced economy and exporting low-cost goods and subsidized goods to the rest of the world. And guess where they are going to land? On the European shores. So we should, our allies, part of our discussion, as our allies come in and talk to us,
they're not allies. Vietnam, drink. Vietnam is the new fentanyl.
That is the big win here.
If you think about it.
The U.S. is trying to rebalance toward more manufacturing. China needs to rebalance towards more consumption. If at a point we can move to that,
they're not
then
coming,
we
buddy.
can move together.
Only Vietnam,
if they will
apparently,
acknowledge this
and they might
fentanyl problem.
back out.
So we have to have an end
It's
to
just
these
the down
mercantilist
now.
policies. President
Jim.
Trump made that a priority,
That's right.
just as tax is a priority.
Well, this is all really important points, and I want to get to tax in a second. But in
That's a lot
terms
of
of the
bullshit, but
message,
let's
you
move
just
on.
sent a great message to the Europeans. Let's hope they get it. In terms of the Chinese economy right now, you have to believe that 104% tariff
And
on
they started
Chinese
making
goods
deals
coming
with
in
other
is going
people.
to have a huge impact on the Chinese economy. How would you assess the Chinese economy right now?
Well, look, they were in a recession/depression due to a real estate collapse that had a real estate bubble that is deflating. That had been going on for years, and the economy was in terrible shape. So again, they're going to go from bad to terrible, and that which is unsustainable will be unsustainable. The other thing that the Chinese should not do is try to devalue their way out of this, because, back to our European friends, our
You don't hold the
Japanese
cards.
allies, our
You don't
Korean
hold the
allies,
cards.
the Vietnamese,
You don't
if
hold the
China
cards.
starts devaluing,
Yeah, it's
then
called
that is a
ghosting.
tax on the rest of the world, and everyone will have to keep raising their
Oh, I
tariffs
love
to
this so
offset
much,
the
but I'm so
devaluation.
happy I figured out how to do
I would
this.
urge them
I
not
just
to
can't
do
tell
that
you.
and
It makes
to
me so happy.
come to the table.
So, I mean, one more question on China, then I want to get to your talks on the tax extensions. How far are you willing to take this in terms of this soft war with China? We've got Chinese stocks trading on U.S. exchanges. U.S. investors are buying those stocks, and that's helping China fund its military. Let's face it. Are you willing to go that far to remove Chinese stocks from U.S. exchanges?
Nobody's lining up today. Very upsetting.
Well, Maria, I
Maybe I
think
should just put
everything's
this
on the
like
table.
this.
We are putting in process export controls for high-value security-related goods. We are talking about the export capital controls in terms of, as you said, a blacklist of things that
God, I love
U.S.
this.
Whether pension funds, endowments, investors should not be investing in to fund the Chinese military machine. So, but that'll be President Trump's decision. And you know what, Maria? At the end of the day, President Trump, Chairman
the end of the
Xi,
day,
have a very good
I just
personal
thought I'd get
relationship,
rich and be able
I
to
am
fuck a couple of
confident that
MAGA
this will be
donors.
resolved at the highest
To be on
level.
TBH,
The
Maria.
president obviously
I was
is
just
trying
here
to
for the
build
MAGA
consensus
pussy.
on the tax cut extensions. The president met with House Republican holdouts yesterday. They're stalling the Senate budget bill
I
over
like
tax and spending
non-sequiturs.
cuts. Fox has told Trump moved some potential no
they
votes
keep me
to
honest.
yes
They
votes.
keep me on my
You've been
toes.
meeting on Capitol Hill now for weeks, but House Freedom
Jalapeno
Caucus Chairman Andy
poppers. Oh,
Harris
I'm hungry.
now says
That
he's
sounds good.
open to the creation of a 40% tax
make myself a
bracket
burrito.
for those earning $1 million or more. So, Mr. Secretary, are you planning on keeping
Oh, I
taxes
don't like
high,
chocolate
raising
orange.
taxes
Don't
for
put
the
orange
rich
in my
in
chocolate.
order to get the tax cuts like no tax on tips through?
Don't put
Maria, the
put fruit in my
negotiations are moving along quickly. I don't want to talk about anything that's
want to talk about
in the
anything.
bill. That it's crazy to negotiate and talk about specific things in a public forum. But I will tell you that the progress has been substantial, and I want to compliment
Got a perfect headset.
Speaker
head here.
Johnson, Leader Thune, Senator Crapo, and Chairman Smith. Just so you know, the House has been working on their bill for almost a year, and in anticipation that we would be here. Leader Thune and Senator Crapo are moving this through the Senate very quickly.
It's
And
Crapo.
with President Trump's leadership,
Your glasses
President Trump
are too
is now
small for your
weighing in
face.
with his preferred
Now I know
policies.
what it is.
And,
Scott
as
Bessent,
you
are you
know,
wearing your
he is
daughter's
remarkably
glasses?
persuasive, especially when
God.
he speaks to Republican congressmen.
And I know that you're meeting with the Republican Study Committee today. What will be victory for you in the coming couple of weeks? Before we know that a bill is headed to the president's desk by the end of May, which is what Mike Johnson wants, what do you want to hear? That you have the votes in the Senate, that you have the votes in the House to actually get a bill, including the tax extensions, done?
That's exactly it, Maria, that we are moving in unison toward getting the bill done as quickly as possible. And Maria, don't forget that within reconciliation, we are going to have the debt ceiling. That is something that is playing in the background.
Yeah.
So we are going to do debt ceiling through reconciliation, the so-called X date, when the government runs out of money. We will never hit that. But if we don't get something done in June, we will go on the warning track. And as every baseball player knows, you don't want to be looking over your shoulder and hit the wall.
Yeah. Secretary, what is the backup plan in the meantime? Because, I understand the long-term issues, and I certainly understand this as a national security issue. 100%. I get that.
And we're going to talk about that. But I'm going to do
doing is monumental. No
twice baked
president
today.
has taken this on before. So we recognize the massive issues here. However, in the meantime, you're talking about $6 trillion in market value loss in a week. You're talking about CEOs now unwilling to give guidance for 2025. Is there a response or a backup plan for what seems to be corporate America shutting down corporate activity? IPOs put on the shelf, M&A deals put on the shelf, CEOs not giving guidance. I spoke with one CEO last night. He said, we're cutting our capital expense budget. I'm cutting my travel budget. I'm doing everything I can in terms of cutting so I don't have to cut jobs yet. But that is, of course, on the horizon because we're cutting capital spending. What do you do in that regard in the coming weeks and months as we see more CEOs talk that way?
Well, I think in the coming months, CEOs won't have to talk that way. And what can we do?
But they won't have
in
to.
The coming
I'm very
weeks
confident.
Is we have opened this process of negotiations, country by country. It's going to be a bespoke, tailored process for each country. And as we strike these trade deals, I think that we will see greater and greater certainty. We have a delegation from Vietnam in.
But everyone just stay calm.
The ambassador's residence.
Please.
The Japanese ambassador's residence here in D.C. for the Cherry Blossom Festival last night, which was fantastic.
It was unbelievable.
A Japanese delegation
there was
will
never
be
going to be
coming
no
soon.
tax on
South
tips.
Korea,
That's right, Shane.
India.
We need
the
the
UK.
revenue.
So I think we are going to see a rapid succession.
It's an emergency.
Of
It's an
these
emergency
deals
on the
that will
emergency
give
for the
CEOs
emergency we created.
Greater certainty, but I think nothing
I need
gives
3
greater
times the
certainty than
powers.
getting
He's
this
wearing
tax
Mrs.
bill done.
Beasley's
So what are the metrics and the milestones
Mrs. Beasley.
that we should be
That's
looking
it.
at?
Oh my
that, the market should be looking at to feel confident that this is working. You just named a number of countries.
Stop. You're
Is
the most
that what you
amazing
want?
person in
Do
the
you want to
fucking
see
universe.
3, 5 new deals
Where
in the
is it?
coming
Mrs.
months in order
Beasley.
to feel like, okay, we're getting somewhere?
That is a
Well,
fucking throwback.
That will be on trade, and then we talked about tax, and then Maria, I wanted to address. In the meantime, there is one of these. I've seen it. Very often in my market career, there's one of these deleveraging convulsions that's going on right now in the markets, and I think it's in the fixed income market. There's some very large leverage players who are experiencing losses.
Really? Like the
that are
Chinese
having
holding
to
our treasury debts?
deleverage.
Is that
I
what you
believe that there is nothing systemic about this. I think that it is an uncomfortable but normal deleveraging that's going on in the bond market. And I expect that as
It's
we
not a
see the
dump?
leverage come down, the risk managers tapping people on the shoulders, telling them to bring their books down, which is what happens every couple of years, as leverage builds up, then the market will calm down.
Oh, really?
The
This
other
is
thing
just
I
a
can tell
natural
you
cycle?
I'm giving
Is
a
that what
speech
you're
this
saying?
morning at the American Bankers
Oh, my
Association,
God.
and we're going to be talking about the substantial financial deregulation that's pushing forward.
Here we go.
And, Maria, if we
Here's
think
the
about
new
President
Scott
Trump's
Bessent.
agenda, tariffs came first. Now we're going to get tax done. We are pushing for deregulation, and the deregulation, unfortunately, takes longer to kick in, but I tell you, when it does, it's going to be powerful. And part of the deregulation in the banking industry will be the changing what's called the supplementary leverage ratio, which will
Treasury.
allow banks
He's
to
Treasury,
buy
Scott
more
Bessent.
treasuries without a big capital charge. So, I would expect
Scott
that
Beasley.
we have created a new buyer for treasury securities.
Corporate bonuses will be reclassified as tips. Holy shit, don't give him that idea.
The fixed income issue has
2
been a
weeks.
debacle this morning.
It's coming with a
and
medical
that
plan.
is why I assume rates are
Calm
moving
down.
up. The yield on the 10-year, we were wondering
Calm
if there
down,
was
Grandma.
if there was a deleveraging issue.
Tim Pool is shitty.
And whether or not China is dumping treasuries. Is that what you see right now? Is China dumping treasuries to try to put pressure on this this market?
Maria, I think it works against their purposes if they are
Does
dumping
it?
treasuries, because if
Really?
they're dumping treasuries, then they have to buy
Really,
something
Scott?
else. If they sell dollars, then they strengthen their currency. And as I said earlier, they've actually been weakening their currency,
Yeah.
which is a loser for everyone.
Right.
And
No, not for
again,
them.
when I
Not
hear all
for
these
them, it
stories,
isn't.
the dollar is no longer going to be the reserve currency. If you end up with the Chinese who are willing to use their currency as a trade tool, that doesn't seem like a
are
very
you
good
mad,
reserve
Scott?
asset
Are you
to
mad,
me.
bro?
Yeah, very good
You
point.
mad,
the
bro?
dollar has been plummeting. You know that. What's
You
the
mad,
impact
bro?
of that?
Well, again, I want to
was the
reiterate the
point,
U.S. has
Maria.
a strong dollar policy.
We need
and
a
part
weaker
of it
dollar.
Is the overall, some of the bilateral, the dollar versus the euro, the dollar
You can't
versus
do
the
this.
yen. The Europeans are going to spend more on defense. So we are seeing upgrades, finally, to European fiscal spending.
Whoa, you
And,
went out-
it
you
was
went there?
President Trump's pressure on
What
NATO,
does that have to do with
on
the price of
military
tea in
alliance
China?
to say pay your fair share,
Yeah.
and that will bump their economy. In Japan, the yen has been strong, but again, that is the result of very strong Japanese economic growth, rising inflation expectations, so the Bank of Japan is raising rates. So,
Yeah.
all that's natural, Maria.
Secretary, I have one more final question for you, and I know that you gave a very thoughtful interview recently, and you talked about the fact that we've got millions of people still in poverty right now. You're about to give a speech. No doubt you're going to touch on the macro story, and increasingly people are expecting that we are
There's
headed
no
for a
more
recession.
bricks. They
I
don't
spoke
need
with
bricks
one CEO over
anymore.
the weekend. He said
That
we
was
are already
another
in a
boondoggle.
recession. So how do you deal with that as you are trying to implement all of these new policies like deregulation when you've got the market expecting a sharp slowdown in economic
Beasley.
activity, sir?
Well, Maria, I think what the CEO may have alluded to, and I've said it in the past, that the manufacturing sector
get
under
over
the
this, I'm
previous
sorry.
administration was in a recession. So what we are doing is what I call reprivatizing the economy. 80% of the job creation was either government jobs or
Wait,
government
what?
adjacent, which is education and healthcare. And this massive amount of government borrowing. So we are also getting the deficit under control, right-sizing the federal workforce, and then on the other side, they're going to re-lever the private sector through smart, safe, and sound bank deregulation. And then, as the CEO said, they can come out of recession because I expect that long-term interest rates should come down as
We're
we
so
get the budget
fucked.
under
We're so
control.
fucked, it's not even
inflation under
fucked.
control, energy prices come down.
Oh yeah, what was
and
that
then
doll?
the
I
private
loved
sector
that
will
doll
have
when I
room
was a
to
kid.
grow.
Oh my
Yeah.
God,
Well,
Karen, I
look,
fucking love that
let's
doll. What
hope
was that? The
this
button
huge
doll or something?
population of people that President Trump delivered in that election, which includes Republicans, Democrats, and independents, will wait this out and get to the other side. and not continue this loss of value. But Secretary, we appreciate your leadership. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Appreciate you being able to keep a straight face while we had that interview. Because that's amazing that you could keep. You know what? I think he's on a lot of ketamine. I think what happened is he partied with Elon over the weekend. He went down to Mar-a-Flarto and he partied with Elon. He took a bunch of K. So he's in a K-hole right now. That's what I think. Scott Bessent behind Mrs. Beasley. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Anyway, so yeah, fuck him. All right. Lolo at Tom, sorry. Okay, so listen, there's something coming up at 11:30 that I'd like to come back for, and that's 2 hours from now. So today we're going to have a twice baked because at 11:30, what is it? At 11:30 is a hearing, a joint economic hearing on using AI and data to improve government. What could go wrong? Dressy Bessie and Dapper Dan. Oh my God, that's what they were, Karen. Oh my God, I love those dolls. I thought they were so amazing. Twice baked. I have to get the slow cooker going. Ooh, that sounds so good. Like chili would be so yummy. Now I want chili. I wonder which CEO Maria's been talking to. Talking pillow financial talk. Okay, so I'm coming back in a couple of hours. Oh, I'm not really into game meat, but that's fine. I understand. Ooh, sorry. I lived in Maine. Okay, so I'm coming back in a couple of hours. I can see your messages. Wait. Who? Don Jr. stopped doing his show. I see you. I'm so sorry, darling. Oh, no, don't say that. I see him. Wait, did Don Jr. stop doing his show? Was that yours? Was that your first comment? Because I don't see much before then, but I remember you coming in the beginning. Did I ignore? I don't want to ignore you. I love you so much. I love you so much. I don't see his clips, although I see him. Yeah, he's on Rumble. Yes, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern, etc., etc. If you can trust it and its users, it seems like a great tool for finding insights in all data government curates. If you can trust it. Yes. Maybe Don Jr. stopped because his dad's making everyone poor. Yeah, Iggy, I see you. You can ignore GP a little more. Article in The Intercept a few weeks ago about AI and dating, scraping, selling on X. Ooh, in The Intercept. I'll have to check that out. But Iggy, I see you. I have not searched out his Triggered show. I think it's still on, though. I think it's still on. I don't think he stopped doing his show, but maybe I'm just not paying attention. I'm not spending a lot of time on X nowadays. That's kind of the dealio. I'm not really spending a ton of time on X. But and I keep getting suspended for saying things that they consider to be violent when I'm just making satire, but whatever. Hold my beer. So I'll be back, in a couple of hours. And Iggy, I do see you. I love you so much. Oh my God, I love you so much. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for coming this morning and spending time with me. I really appreciate it. I really, really, really do. Oh, there you are. That Wired article on Oz had a link to former CMS plans for AI. Ooh, I'll have to take a look at that. I should suspend Carla. I love you guys. Yes, the new show in a couple of hours. I'll throw up a reminder on my YouTube. So if you need that, I'll have that for you. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Val. Thank you. Oz will not be as cautious as former CMS head. I can only imagine. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yes, Max uses X cancel, all one word, to monitor shitter. So if you're not on Twitter anymore, you can go to X cancel and monitor Twitter as again. Oh, he did a State Department. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, you've never been suspended on X? How in the world, Karen? How in the world did you escape that? Can't even believe it. We might do that. All right. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for coming. Get something to eat, rest, do work if you have to. Go outside. Highly suggest. I'm going to go. Yes, 2:30 Eastern time. 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 Eastern, everything in between and outside of that. Thank you so much. Black Bear, so good to see you, my friend. So good to see you, my dear, dear old friend. All right, I will see you all later. Have a great day. Don't let the turkeys get you down. Somehow we're going to get through this. I don't know how, but we're going to have to figure it out. So here we are. All right, bye.